Chapter 115. The Chu Emperor district of the royal capital occupied a vast area, with tens of thousands of soldiers guarding it. Normally, no one was allowed to step foot into this area. In this vast Chu Emperor district, with a single glance, one could see 9 towering platforms arranged in a triangular formation. There was 1 at the front, 3 in the middle, and 5 at the back, giving off an extremely strong sense of hierarchy. On the left and right side of the 9 towering platforms, there were tens of thousands of stone chairs, and in front of the stone chairs, there were even long tables made of stone. They were evenly distributed, as though a grand banquet could be held here. At the front of the towering platform, there was a flight of steps carved from azure dragon jade stone, exuding an aura of nobility and nobility. On top of the flight of steps, there was a throne, the azure dragon jadestone throne. In the past, when the Chu country was founded, the emperor had sat on this azure dragon jadestone throne, inviting the various feudal lords and esteemed guests to a banquet. On the 9 towering platforms, the silhouettes of the 9 armies of the past could still be seen. The entire Chu Emperor district was filled with the nobility of the emperor. And after that, the Chu Emperor district became the place where the Junlin banquet was held. During the Junlin banquet, the emperor would personally attend the banquet, inviting the feudal lords and nobles. However, the 9 towering platforms were no longer used for the banquet. Instead, they became a place where the geniuses of the Chu country could display their brilliance. Today, the warm sunlight cascaded down onto the royal capital of Chu, causing the atmosphere of the entire royal capital to boil with excitement. In the surroundings of the Chu Emperor district, a terrifying number of people gathered. Countless people from the royal capital of Chu had arrived, stopping their steps and gazing in the direction of the Chu Emperor district. In fact, there were even people from the other regions of Chu, who had traversed thousands of mountains and tens of thousands of rivers to come to the royal capital, all for the sake of witnessing the grand banquet. Tomorrow would be the day the Junlin banquet would officially begin. There were already people fighting for the best view, allowing them to spectate the battles taking place on the 9 towering platforms. Some of the inns located far away from the Chu Emperor district were all built high up. Because of this, they would be able to see everything that was happening in the Chu Emperor district. Currently, these inns were already filled to the brim with people. The Junlin banquet was the grandest event held in the Chu country every year. Today, the enthusiasm of the citizens of Chu was at an unprecedented level. This kind of spirit of martial prowess was also the motivation of the generations of Chu country. I heard that this year's Junlin banquet will be the grandest one in the past tens of years. I hope that this year's Junlin banquet will be recorded in the annals of history. Yes, who would have thought that the Snowcloud country would join forces with the Chu country to organize this year's Junlin banquet? Currently, the 7 knights, 3 swords and duo prides of Snowcloud have already arrived in the royal capital of Chu, and are currently residing in the royal palace. Not only that, our Chu country has the 10 prodigies, in addition to Luo Qianqiu, Orkan and the other rising stars of the younger generation, as well as the genius disciples of the various martial academies. This year's Junlin banquet will definitely be unprecedentedly fascinating. Everyone was looking forward to it. The people of Chu naturally knew who would receive the most attention in the Junlin banquet this time around. Heaven's Wonder, one of the 3 great markets, had an extremely high intelligence network. Just by looking at the payout rates of Heaven's Wonder, one could easily understand which group of people would receive the most attention in this Junlin banquet. Yi Wuke and Immortal Drunkenwine's names weren't listed in the betting odds. Everyone was extremely clear what this signified. Immortal Drunkenwine and Yi Wuke were no longer at the arterial circulation realm. Other than Luo Qianqiu, there was naturally one of the duo prides of Snowcloud, Sikong Mingyue. This person and the Crown Prince of Snowcloud were known as the duo prides. Other than the 2 of them, there were also the 10 prodigies of royal capital, as well as the arterial circulation experts of Snowcloud's 7 knights and the 3 swords. In addition to the youths from the Emperor Star Academy, the Royal Academy, and the Godly General Martial Palace. Within the royal capital, there were many who had already bet their lives on Heaven's Wonder. Naturally, there were also those who were still spectating, waiting for the start of the Junlin banquet to see the performances of these people. However, at that time, the payout rates would naturally be adjusted accordingly. Currently, within and outside the royal capital, everyone was paying close attention to the situation at the Chu Emperor District. Even within the Emperor Star Academy, the atmosphere was somewhat desolate. Occasionally, there would be a few people walking around, but the majority of the people had already left the Emperor Star Academy and were heading towards the Chu Emperor District. Among them, even the elders of the Emperor Star Academy were included. Although the royal clan and the Emperor Star Academy weren't on friendly terms, on the surface, they would still give face to the Emperor Star Academy. Hence, as long as one was an elder of the Emperor Star Academy, they would be able to obtain a seat in the Chu Emperor District. Not only for the Emperor Star Academy, the elders of the 9 martial academies would also be invited to the Junlin banquet every year. After all, the main characters of the Junlin banquet were the young geniuses of the various academies. As dusk approached, the remaining students of the Emperor Star Academy gradually departed. After all, the Junlin banquet would officially commence tomorrow morning. The students of the Emperor Star Academy had long since forgotten that Qin Wentian was still in the Astral River Hall, cultivating with his eyes closed. After so many days, there were already very few people who paid attention to Qin Wentian. The gazes of humans were always easily diverted, especially when something major was about to happen. Outside the Astral River Hall, Luo Huan, Mountain and Fanla stood outside, staring at the silhouette on the 4th level as they couldn't help but to smile bitterly. If that bastard still doesn't come out, he's going to miss out on the Junlin banquet this year. Although he might not be able to achieve any results this time around, it's still an opportunity for him to temper himself. Luo Huan cursed in a low voice, feeling extremely helpless. Junior brother Qin is able to remain in the 4th level for so long. From this, it can be seen that his ability to withstand pressure isn't something others can compare to. As expected of someone who has condensed an astral soul from the 4th heavenly layer, let him stay here for a few more days, and his perception will be able to remain in the 4th heavenly layer for a longer period of time, allowing him to choose a better astral soul. Mountain seemed to be afraid that Luo Huan would disturb Qin Wentian. I don't need you to remind me. Luo Huan glared at Mountain as she continued. Let's go, it's about time for us to move out. MHM. Mountain nodded his head. This time around, he and Luo Huan were also going to participate in the Junlin banquet. Senior sister, you guys go ahead first. I'll wait a little longer. Fanla smiled at the two of them. Luo Huan and Mountain didn't say anything as they departed, leaving Fanla behind. His gaze shifted onto the 4th level of the Astral River Hall, as his eyes flickered unceasingly. Rubbing his chin, Fanla mumbled, "Based on your personality, I don't think you would miss out on the Junlin banquet this time around." In the entire Emperor Star Academy, the ones who understood Qin Wentian the most were none other than Fan Lo and Qin Yao. Fanla had a feeling that this bastard would appear before the Junlin banquet. It wasn't that Qin Wentian couldn't break through the restrictions of the 4th level of the Astral River Hall. Although this level had already given him quite a bit of pressure, he had already gotten used to it as time flowed by. At this moment, he was carefully comprehending something. He discovered that in every level of the Astral River Hall, the countless constellations in the Astral River Hall converged into lines of runic patterns. These runic patterns then transformed into innate techniques, transforming into formless attacks, which were also known as pressure. And it was precisely this formless energy that was akin to the pressure of the astral rivers in the 9 heavenly layers. At this moment, Qin Wentian was thinking that the pressure of the 4th level was indeed similar to the pressure of the 4th heavenly layer. In that case, what about the 5th, 6th, and even the 9th level? Even the founder of the Emperor Star Academy wouldn't be able to imitate the pressure of the 9th heavenly layer, unless he had already reached the level where he could condense an astral soul from the 9th heavenly layer. However, that was obviously impossible. At the very least, Qin Wentian didn't believe that the founder of the Emperor Star Academy would have such a heaven-defying strength. Not only that, the runic patterns that Qin Wentian saw were still converging into fist shadows. In the night sky, there seemed to be 4 different layers of space. Each layer of space was flowing at the same time, as they converged downwards, gradually transforming into a terrifying whirlpool. Layer by layer, A fist blasted out from the black whirlpool. At the instant the fist blasted out, it was no longer a single attack. Instead, it transformed into countless fist shadows that filled the entire sky. It was similar to the revolving sea imprint of the thousand-hand imprint, where the waves of energy converged together. However, it was even more profound, and its might was even stronger. I'm going to take a look at the 5th level, Qin Wentian silently stated in his heart. After which, he stood up, and his incomparably resolute will blasted towards the black whirlpool. The terrifying fist shadows blasted downwards, yet they had no way to destroy his will. A brilliant light flashed, and his body vanished from his original location. At this moment, it was already night time, yet the Astral River Hall was still as resplendent as ever. Fatty Fan casually sat on the ground, and at this moment, he felt a piercing light in his eyes. Involuntarily he opened his eyes, only to see an even more resplendent starry sky. Incomparably resplendent. Fan Li's gaze stiffened as he stared unblinkingly at the Astral River Hall. 5th level this beast. Fan Li's mouth was agape, as an expression of shock could be seen on his face. That pervert, beast, and fellow that deserved the wrath of the heavens, had actually stepped into the 5th level of the Astral River Hall. Does this mean that he has the opportunity to condense an astral soul from the 5th heavenly layer? Fan Le blinked his eyes as he cast a glance at his surroundings. At this moment, the Emperor Star Academy was exceptionally quiet, causing Fan Le to feel somewhat disappointed. Staring at the astral light that filled the skies, Fan Le murmured, "The astral light is so resplendent, but what a pity that there's no spectator. Why are you so good at picking the right time? I really want to see the expressions of Qiu Mo and Jiang Xiu when they see this scene." Fan Le stood up and paced back and forth, feeling extremely unhappy. Such a good opportunity to show off, yet it actually happened on the night before the Junlin banquet. Yet, no one was there to witness it. How depressed Fatty was. At this moment, the old guard of the Astral River Hall was currently seated in a remote corner. Upon seeing the brilliant light of the 5th level, his cloudy eyes lit up as his body involuntarily trembled. At such a young age, he has already stepped into the 5th level of the Astral River Hall. The old guard murmured in his heart, as an indescribable feeling of joy appeared in his heart. Busy. At this moment, a dazzling beam of astral light erupted forth from the center of the Astral River Hall, radiating outwards towards the entire Emperor Star Academy. The resplendent astral light was so real that the old guard froze, as his body abruptly trembled violently. How is this possible? How is this possible? The old guard stared at the astral light that filled the skies, as an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. In that instant, the astral light seemed to have illuminated the entire Emperor Star Academy. Countless people inclined their heads, and it was as though they were looking at two different parts of the starry skies. Fatty Fan Le, who was pacing back and forth, opened his mouth wide, as he stood there in a daze. It was as though his eyeballs had stopped moving. Fuck! In the night sky, a vulgar voice cursed out. After which, the astral light dimmed once again. However, at this moment, the remaining students of the Emperor Star Academy all inclined their heads, and as they stared at the disappearing astral light, expressions of bewilderment could be seen on their faces. Who was it that had lit up the second part of the starry skies? Chapter 116. What happened just now? In the night sky above the Emperor Star Academy, a low voice rang out. That instant of light illuminated the night sky of the Emperor Star Academy. It was as though they had seen a second starry sky. This scene was too miraculous. The body of the old guardian of the Astral River Hall trembled, even more violently as he stared at the young and handsome silhouette slowly walking out of the Astral River Hall. Under his aged countenance, a blazing heat could be seen in his eyes. Although it was only an instant, he actually managed to ascend to the 6th level of the Astral River Hall. How did this fellow do it? Too terrifying. At this moment, Qin Wentian was still extremely depressed. When he ascended to the 5th level, he discovered that the runes of the 5th layer of the Astral River Hall flowed together, converging together to form a fist light that pressed downwards. It was extremely ferocious, causing him to be unable to withstand it. Using his strongest will, He broke through the restriction of the 5th layer and ascended to the 6th level. However, in the space of the 6th level, in just an instant, he saw the sky full of stars seem to transform into falling fist lights, converging together and blasting towards him, almost killing him, directly forcing him back to the 5th level. Because his will was heavily injured, it was difficult for him to remain on the 5th level. Hence, Qin Wentian had no choice but to exit the Astral River Hall, leaving behind a resplendent beam of light in the darkness of the Emperor Star Academy. I'm going to enter closed-door seclusion. The moment Qin Wentian exited the Astral River Hall, the first thing he said was that he was going to cultivate. Fan Li's eyes flickered. Did this perverted beast not know what he had done earlier? Tomorrow is the Junlin banquet. After a moment of silence, Fan Li spoke to Qin Wentian. I want to cultivate. Qin Wentian stared at Fan Li as he hurriedly departed the area. Fatty's eyes flashed as he asked, could it be that the crucial moment has arrived? Speaking of which, Qin Wentian had stayed in the Astral River Hall for so many days, he should have gained many insights. Fatty didn't believe that that bastard would waste his time here. Earlier he had personally witnessed how after so many days of silence, Qin Wentian had finally erupted with a resplendent radiance. The only pity was that there was no audience. Fatty, this was too depressing. Thinking of this, the fat man pulled a long face and chased after Qin Wentian, the fat on his body jiggling. The Emperor Star Academy was still as quiet as ever, but at this moment, there were many who felt their hearts trembling. They had always been in the Emperor Star Academy, protecting this sacred ground. It was as though they were eternally hidden in the darkness, rarely coming out. In fact, even when they came out, nobody knew who they were. Qin Wentian had indeed returned to closed-door seclusion. Even if the Junlin banquet was held tomorrow, he wanted to sort out the insights he had gained during these few days. Those insights would be able to allow his strength to take another step forward. And when he stacked them together, he would be able to undergo a transformation. Therefore, as soon as he returned to his residence, he fell asleep. It was a dream of his own making. Beside him, there were many Yuan meteor stones. These Yuan meteor stones could be used at any time. Tonight, at the place where Qin Wentian was staying, the astral light was exceptionally resplendent. In the skies, 2 constellations cascaded downwards, enveloping the sleeping Qin Wentian. Although he was in a state of deep sleep, Qin Wentian released both of his astral souls at the same time, absorbing the astral energy from the astral light. Within his body, crackling sounds could be heard unceasingly. A terrifying energy was currently frenziedly battering against his body, akin to the crashing waves of the ocean. The crashing sounds were exceptionally clear in the darkness of the night. At this moment, Qin Wentian didn't fall into a deep dream. He was only observing his own body in his sleep. At this moment, it was as though he could see the acupoints and arterial pathways in his body, as well as the veins and arteries in his body. A brand new pathway was being madly opened up, gushing towards every part of his body. A beam of light shone into Qin Wentian's body. 7 stellar meridians were opened up, and these 7 stellar meridians were akin to 7 astral rivers that flowed horizontally across his body. Each of them had their own trajectories, yet there seemed to be a miraculous connection between them. Motes of astral light flowed within the stellar meridians, causing Qin Wentian to feel slightly moved in his heart. He shattered the meridians in his body, allowing the astral energy to converge into a river. The newly formed stellar meridians were truly akin to the astral river. Wasn't the body of a human also akin to the starry sky? Now that my stellar meridians are unobstructed, it's much easier for me to unleash innate techniques from my hands. However, the astral river is magnificent, and the astral energy can be channeled to any location. Within my body, innate techniques condensed from astral energy can also be unleashed from my feet. Or it can be the same as before, when I spit out palm imprints from my mouth. Qin Wentian thought in his heart. He increasingly felt that cultivation wasn't easy. Why couldn't he open up his mind and develop his own way of thinking? Instead, he had to follow the limits of his thoughts and cultivate step by step. He himself had once linked divine imprints and innate techniques together. Even Senior Gung Hong hadn't thought of this. And Senior Gung Hong had also said that after stepping into the Heavenly Dipper realm, astral souls would become a type of attack. Now he could also use them to attack innate techniques. The path of cultivation was difficult, but this difficult path was boundlessly vast. Why couldn't he roam freely within it? When he awoke from his dream, it was already daytime. The morning air was slightly damp, emitting a hint of coldness. Qin Wentian opened his eyes, and within them, a sharp glint of light erupted forth, as resplendent as the constellations in the night sky. It was as though there was a constellation within his eyes. He only felt his mind becoming clearer, his vision becoming clearer, and his ears becoming more sensitive. He could even hear the slightest movement of the grass in the wind. This was the change brought about by his cultivation base. Every time he opened an arterial pathway, his cultivation base would rise, and the quality of his body would also rise accordingly. My Yuan meteor stones have been completely depleted. Qin Wentian mused in his heart. Cultivation consumed too many resources. Luckily, the current him didn't need to worry about Yuan meteor stones for the time being. Stretching his muscles, Qin Wentian's body emitted a crisp crackling sound as he stood up. This feeling was extremely wonderful, as all the pores on his body felt incomparably comfortable. You're finally willing to wake up. A voice drifted over from the side. Fatty Fan Lu was lazily lying in a pavilion, his eyes still drowsy, as though he hadn't woken up yet. Fatty, why are you sleeping here? Qin Wentian couldn't help but smile as he discovered Fan Li's presence. Waiting for you to participate in the Junlin banquet. Fan Lu stood up, dusting off the dust on his robes as he stared at Qin Wentian in disdain. However, in that disdainful gaze of his, Fan Lu couldn't even allow Fatty to have a good night's sleep. You're going to participate as well? Qin Wentian's eyes shone with a brilliant light. These few days, Teacher Mustang had been watching over Fatty's cultivation, and his improvement should be extremely great. Not only that, Qin Wentian had given Fatty quite a number of Yuan meteor stones for his cultivation. Qin Wentian was very clear that Fatty's talent wasn't bad at all. Just like what Mustang had said, Fatty was simply too lazy. I'm going to place my bet. Fatty casually replied. He was thinking that after Qin Wentian registered and displayed his talent, Heaven's Wonder would definitely offer a payout for Qin Wentian. At that time, he would bet everything he had on Qin Wentian. For someone like Qin Wentian who was completely disregarded, as long as he could charge into the top 9 rankings, the payout would definitely be extremely high. As he thought of this, Fatty's eyes shone as he stared at Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian to involuntarily shiver. What kind of devious scheme was this bastard plotting? Early in the morning, the Chu Emperor district was already filled with a sea of people. The royal capital had sent out an army of 10,000 to maintain order, sealing off the entire area around the Chu Emperor district. Anyone who came to spectate had to maintain a certain distance from the Chu Emperor district, and not disturb the commencement of the Junlin banquet. This region was the same as many other regions in the royal capital. For those below Yuanfu, flying was prohibited. However, at this moment, there were many demonic beasts flying about in the skies. Not only that, in the direction of the royal capital, there were rows of demonic beasts carrying delicacies and wine, placing them on the cleanly clean tables. Staring at the silhouettes of demonic beasts that blotted out the skies, the spectators couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. This was the grandest event in the Chu country every year. The Junlin banquet was being held today. The royal clan had invited the nobles and nobles, as well as guests from all over the world. The people from the Mu clan have arrived. The Mu clan that has always been low profile has actually arrived early. The gazes of the spectators shifted towards the platform, only to see a row of silhouettes appearing there. The Mu clan was one of the noble clans of the royal capital, and naturally, they had a seat there. Mu Rou also appeared within the crowd of the Mu clan. The people from the O clan have also arrived. I heard that Orkan is extremely ambitious this time around. Another row of silhouettes descended. These were none other than the people from the O clan. According to the payout rates offered by Heaven's Wonder, Orkan had an extremely high possibility of obtaining one of the top 9 rankings. Most probably, the O clan was currently sharpening their blades. The The people from the Yi clan and the Violet King Palace have arrived together. And who are the people following behind the Yi clan? That young lady is extremely beautiful, but I don't think the Yi clan has such a character. That's Autumn Snow from the Bai clan. She once caused a huge commotion, but when she was condensing her second astral soul, there seemed to be signs of her death. Someone replied, as the crowd was enlightened. So it was the Bai clan from the Sky Harmony City. At this time last year, this matter had also caused a huge commotion in the royal capital. After all, the person who condensed his first astral soul for the third astral soul was someone who created history. After arriving in the royal capital, Autumn Snow didn't have much achievements, and the Bai clan was gradually forgotten by the masses. Instead, Qin Wentian, who had lost face in the Sky Harmony City, had now become a character that no one dared to approach. The people from the various martial academies have also arrived. At this moment, more and more people arrived, causing a huge commotion. The people from the Star River Association have also arrived. The people from the Divine Weapon Pavilion have also arrived. The people from the Mo clan have also arrived. The crowd stared at the platform, as they felt a surge of emotions in their hearts. The various transcendent powers of the royal capital had all gathered at the Junlin banquet. Chapter 117. The Star River Association transcended the royal clan. The wealth of the Divine Weapon Pavilion could rival an entire country. The Mo clan had the strongest cultivators below the Heavenly Dipper realm in Chu. These three major powers all had a special status in Chu. Today they were all gathered here. The Divine Weapon Pavilion has never appeared in the Junlin banquet before. The crowd mused. But now they were here. Why did the Divine Weapon Pavilion appear? It was rumored that the Divine Weapon Pavilion held Qin Wentian in high regard. Back then during the snowstorm, Qin Wentian had obstructed the path of the third prince, Chu Tianjiao, and the Divine Weapon Pavilion had stood behind him. The Mo clan hasn't appeared in the Junlin banquet for a few years now. Could it be that Mo Qingqing wants to participate in this year's Junlin banquet? Expressions of curiosity appeared on the faces of the spectators, as they stared in the direction of the Mo clan. Qingqing, you're here as well. In the direction of the Yi clan, Yi Wuk called out to Mo Qingqing. Mo Qingqing calmly glanced over there, ignoring him. Yi Wuk wasn't angered, he continued standing there quietly. His extraordinary handsomeness was also being stared at by many young maidens. For an outstanding man like Yi Wuk, he naturally wouldn't lack admirers. In the Royal Academy, there were many who took the initiative to woo him. However, to Yi Wuke, who pursued perfection, he felt that only a beauty like Mo Qingqing would be more compatible with him. It was just that Mo Qingqing had never treated him with sincerity. He had once tried to woo Mo Qingqing, but he had clearly failed. However, seeing that all those who wooed Mo Qingqing had failed, he gradually accepted it. But now he felt somewhat unhappy in his heart because Mo Qingqing seemed to view Qin Wentian in a different light. Not only that, the Yi clan had once represented him to go to the Sky Harmony City, bringing Qin Wentian's fiancée back to the royal capital. In Yi Wuk's eyes, Autumn Snow naturally couldn't be compared to Mo Qingqing. Especially now that Autumn Snow was on the verge of death, he still had to consider whether or not she could become his woman. The people from the royal palace have arrived. At this moment, the crowd raised their heads and gazed into the distance, only to see a group of demonic beasts rushing over, landing behind the throne of the Chu Emperor district. Following which, a group of silhouettes slowly ascended, walking to the most eye-catching position. The person in the center was none other than Chu Tianjiao. This year, during the Junlin banquet, the sovereign king had yet to arrive. Chu Tianjiao sat on the throne of the Chu Emperor district. This meant that from today onwards, the Emperor of Chu had announced to the entire world that Chu Tianjiao was his successor. This was a silent declaration, signifying that it was only a matter of time before Chu Tianjiao ascended to the throne of Chu. Looks like His Majesty King Chu's health isn't very good. Many in the crowd silently speculated. If not, the sovereign king wouldn't have been absent from the Junlin banquet this time around. Not only that, he had even handed over the position of crown prince to Chu Tianjiao. Beside Chu Tianjiao, there were several silhouettes. On the left, Luo Qianqiu appeared, standing side by side with several other youths. In front of Luo Qianqiu, there was a silhouette that seemed to be Luo Qianqiu's elder. This scene caused a sharp glint of light to flash in the eyes of those who knew the inside story. If they knew Luo Qianqiu's identity, they would naturally be able to guess where these people came from. The gazes of those in the crowd couldn't help but turn heavy. They were from the Nine Mystical Palace, standing behind the curtains of Chu. As for the right side of Chu Tianjiao, there was a silhouette with an extraordinary demeanor. He casually stood there, with a smile on his face. His demeanor didn't lose out to Chu Tianjiao in the slightest, causing people to feel that this person was a dragon amongst men. The Crown Prince of Snowcloud, Xiao Lok, one of the duo prides. In Snowcloud, his prestige wasn't inferior to Chu Tianjiao's. Beside Xiao Lok was a group of youths. They were none other than the most outstanding geniuses of Snowcloud, including Sikong Mingyue, the three swords and Qi Yi of Snowcloud. At this moment, the spectators all stood up, casting their gazes onto Chu Tianjiao. This was the etiquette of the Junlin banquet, except that in the past, it was reserved for the emperor. But today it was reserved for Chu Tianjiao. Everyone, please be seated. Chu Tianjiao stretched out his hands as he smiled. After which, he took the lead and sat down on the throne. Everyone was going to witness history together. Thank you, Your Highness. The crowd bowed, as they all sat down. Everyone, please enjoy the banquet. Chu Tianjiao politely spoke, as he took the lead and toasted the crowd. At the same time, on the 9 towering platforms in the middle, a few silhouettes walked up, preparing a table, chair, and brush. Today, I'm extremely honored that the Snowcloud country will be co-hosting the Junlin banquet together with my Chu country. I believe that this banquet will be a grand occasion for our Chu country. Now, as long as you're at the 5th level of arterial circulation or above, and are below Yuanfu, you can all ascend to the 9 towering platforms and register for the Junlin banquet. And I, along with everyone else here, will be one of the witnesses of this banquet. Chu Tianjiao smiled as he spoke to the crowd. The minimum requirement to participate in the Junlin banquet was the 5th level of arterial circulation. If one's cultivation base was any lower, there was no need for them to participate at all. Because for those below the 5th level of arterial circulation, it was impossible for them to obtain the top 9 rankings of the Junlin banquet. Similarly, those at this level wouldn't miss out on the Junlin banquet next year. For the 9 towering platforms, you can choose which one to register for the Junlin banquet. After which, there will be an elimination battle on each of the platforms. You can randomly select someone to battle, until there are only 2 remaining. Out of the 9 towering platforms, a total of 18 people will advance to the next round. At this moment, an old man stood beside Chu Tianjiao as he continued. These 18 people will proceed to the next round of battles to determine the top 9 rankings of this year's Junlin banquet. The rules of the Junlin banquet were very simple. There would be 9 towering platforms where battles would take place at the same time. On each platform, there would be an elimination battle until there were only 2 remaining. Because of the existence of the 9 fighting platforms, those who were expected to be able to compete for the top 9 positions could register on different platforms to avoid being eliminated in the first round of elimination. In this way, those who were expected to compete for the top 9 positions would not be eliminated in advance. Qianqiu, the next stage will be yours. Beside Chu Tianjiao, the old man in the lead calmly spoke to Luo Qianqiu, who was standing beside him. Luo Qianqiu lightly nodded his head. This time around, the top ranker of the Junlin banquet would definitely be his. Stepping out, Luo Qianqiu's silhouette leapt up, as though he had transformed into a great rock, descending from the heavens and landing on the first towering platform. Luo Qianqiu chose to register for the first towering platform. At the same instant, a silhouette appeared beside Luo Qianqiu. It was actually Sikong Mingyue. He exchanged a glance with Luo Qianqiu, and a resplendent light could be seen flickering in their eyes. Luo Qianqiu, Sikong Mingyue. These two have the highest hopes of obtaining the top ranking of this year's Junlin banquet. This point can be seen from the payout rates of Heaven's Wonder. The 2 of them actually registered for the same towering platform. The gazes of the crowd froze. If this was the case, the judges wouldn't allow the 2 of them to clash against each other. If not, the two seated participants would be eliminated, and that wouldn't be a good thing to watch. It was as though the number of participants on the first towering platform had already been determined. Luo Qianqiu and Xikong Mingyue wouldn't be able to register for the first towering platform. The crowd gradually walked towards the 9 towering platforms and wrote their names down. The information provided by Heaven's Wonder is truly tyrannical. For this year's Junlin banquet, Immortal Drunken Wine and Yi Wukei seem to have no intentions of participating. They must have already broken through to Yuanfu, and the last 5 of the 10 prodigies all chose different platforms to register for the banquet. Xikong Mingyue, who was beside Xiao LVL, has already registered. 2nd of the 3 swords, 5th of the 7 knights have also registered. Their combat prowess should be at the peak of arterial circulation. Not only that, they also chose different platforms to register for the banquet. Some of the more outstanding characters from the Emperor Star Academy have also registered. Orkan, Luo Huan and Luo Cheng. I heard that their combat prowess isn't any weaker compared to Jiang Xiao. That's Ho Tai and Lungya from the godly General Martial Palace. These two are also favored by Heaven's Wonder, and have a high chance of getting into the top 9 rankings. The information provided by Heaven's Wonder was extremely terrifying. They had even managed to obtain information about the geniuses from the godly General Martial Palace, who rarely ventured into the royal capital. Not only that, at this moment, not far away from the Chu Emperor District was a branch of Heaven's Wonder. When spectating the battles, one could even run over to the Drunken Wonder Pavilion to see the changes in the payout rates. After a period of time, the crowd gradually walked onto the fighting platform. Everyone discovered a strange rule. Those who had a chance to compete for the top 9 positions almost all avoided the situation where many people appeared on the same platform. Obviously, they were also observing each other, as if they had some kind of tacit understanding. According to the payout rates provided by Heaven's Wonder, those who had a chance of getting into the top 9 rankings were Snowcloud Country, Xikong Mingyue of the Duo Prides, 2nd and 3rd of the 3 swords, and 5th of the 7 knights from the 3rd to 7th knight. Emperor Star Academy, Luo Qianqiu Orkan, Jiang Xiu Luo Huan Luo Cheng. Among them, Luo Huan and Luo Cheng were chosen, causing many to feel a little surprised. However, the payout rates for them were extremely high, and it was obvious that their chances of getting into the top 9 rankings weren't as high as the others. Royal Academy, 8th of the 10 prodigies Shi Jun, and the Little Prince Chu Chun. Godly General Martial Palace, Ho Tai Lungya. Divine Wind Academy, 6th of the 10 prodigies Jiang Feng. There were also the 7th of the 10 prodigies Yi Ji, and the 9th of the 10 prodigies Kuang Sheng. Yi Ji was the adopted daughter of the Yi clan, while Kuang Sheng was a disciple of the Mad Blade sect. Out of these people, if Luo Huan and Luo Cheng were excluded, there would be a total of 18 rankings. Those who were attentive would discover that these 18 people were all on the 9 towering platforms, with 2 people on each platform. At this moment, on the platform that was the furthest away from the Junlin banquet, a silhouette abruptly appeared. The instant this silhouette leapt onto the platform, a commotion broke out among the spectators. Qin Wentian, he's also registered for the Junlin banquet, and is currently on the 9th platform. Chu Tianjiao's eyes flickered with an expression of interest as he gazed in that direction. Qin Wentian. Yi Wuk, upon seeing Qin Wentian's appearance, involuntarily cast a glance at Autumn Snow and her daughter, who were seated behind the Yi clan. In the direction of the Mo clan, Mo Qingqing had a smile on her face as she spoke in a low voice. Dear best Qingqing, I heard that you've been quite close with that brat from the Qing clan recently. At this moment, a middle-aged man beside Mo Qingqing spoke in a low voice, causing Mo Qingqing's countenance to stiffen. She then smiled. Didn't you guys say that the Mo clan was on good terms with the Qin clan in the past? I got along well with Qin Wentian, so we naturally became friends. Is that really the case? The middle-aged man laughed as he looked at his daughter. What are you thinking about? Mo Qingqing couldn't help but blush when she saw her father staring at her. Chapter 118. Luo Qianqiu, the Yi clan, the O clan, the Mu clan, and the Yan clan all saw Qin Wentian, but each of them had different thoughts in their hearts. Although Qin Wentian's strength wasn't bad, and he had once defeated Yanaro, it didn't seem like he would be able to obtain a place in the Junlin banquet. He should be Qin Wentian. In the direction of the Mu clan, an old man whispered to Mu Rou. He had seen Qin Wentian's portrait before. Mu Rou lightly nodded her head, as a brilliant light flickered in her eyes when she looked at Qin Wentian. That divine inscription painting had allowed her to obtain a promise from Gong Yanghong, and she had yet to personally thank Qin Wentian for this. However, Mu Rou was still slightly worried. The Junlin banquet was different from ordinary sparring. The Chu country emphasized martial prowess, and in the grandest arena of the Chu country, everyone wanted to obtain a good ranking. The battles would be extremely intense, and casualties were a common occurrence. Unless one side admitted defeat, the other side would have no choice but to stop. And as long as the word "admit defeat" wasn't shouted out, one could be ruthless. Dying in the Junlin banquet wasn't something rare. Regardless of which academy or which power they were from, if they died in battle because they refused to admit defeat, there was no reason to blame their opponents. Autumn Snow naturally saw that silhouette. In her heart, there was a knot in her heart, because the person she wanted to break off the engagement with was now gradually pulling further and further away from her. He should be participating in the Junlin banquet just to join in the fun. Autumn Snow thought in her heart, as though she was consoling herself. He's just a supporting character. What's the point of participating in the Junlin banquet? Bai Qingsong calmly stated, as though he was intentionally saying this for Autumn Snow to hear. He naturally knew the knot in Autumn Snow's heart, because he too had a knot in his heart. At this moment, Jiang Xiu's gaze was extremely sharp. Qin Wentian had registered on the 9th towering platform, and he had registered on the same platform as well. This meant that the two of them had a chance of meeting each other. As he thought of this, a cold smile appeared on Jiang Xiu's face. He hoped that Qin Wentian's strength would be stronger. That way, he wouldn't be eliminated too early and wouldn't even have the chance to meet Qin Wentian. Yanaro's countenance was as cold as ever. He was the same as Qin Wentian, registering his name on the same platform. Very quickly, there were no longer people heading towards the 9 towering platforms. Everyone who wished to participate in the Junlin banquet had already registered. There were over 100 participants on each of the platforms. The one with the fewest dueling platforms was naturally the first dueling platform. The two most promising candidates, Luo Qianqiu and Xikong Mingyue, were both there. Who would dare to be cannon fodder? Compared to the other dueling platforms, the first dueling platform had no hope at all. In the area where the Divine Weapon Pavilion was located, the person sitting at the very front was exceptionally eye-catching. This was a girl who seemed to be around 25 or 26 years of age. She was exceedingly beautiful and exuded a mature femininity, appearing exceptionally alluring. This girl was none other than the Vice Pavilion Master of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, An Luyan. At this moment, An Luyan smiled as she gazed at the 9 towering platforms. The distribution of the 18 most promising candidates is quite even, with 2 people on each platform. It's as though they all have a tacit understanding. Only in this case can we test the others. If we want to break through the 9 platforms, we have to surpass all of them. Yang Chen, who was at the side, laughed as he continued. The participants on the 9th platform that Qin Wentian is on can be considered the weakest. Jiang Xiu, ranked last among the 10 prodigies, and Qi Yi, ranked 7th among the 7 knights. Compared to the other platforms, it should be easier to break through the 9th platform. That's where you're wrong. An Luyan laughed. It's precisely because everyone thinks that it's easier to break through the 9th platform that some of the stronger ones also registered there. For example, Luo Cheng from the Emperor Star Academy, he's not weak at all. There's also Yanaro. He has already broken through to the 8th level of arterial circulation, so his strength should be pretty good as well. Hence, I feel that the battles on the 9th platform would be the most intense. I didn't expect this. Although our Divine Weapon Pavilion doesn't know much about the youths outside, I'm afraid that those from the other powers would be able to easily see through us. Yang Chen laughed. And at this moment, the person beside Chu Tianjiao spoke again. I hope that the representatives of the 9 martial academies will be sent out. From each of the 9 martial academies, one representative stood up. After which, they soared through the air and landed on the 9 platforms, receiving the name list and writing down their names. The 9 martial academies were the judges of the 9 platforms, and they were in charge of selecting the participants. Is it finally going to start? In the vast surroundings of the Chu Emperor District, the gazes of countless people were fixed on the 9 platforms. This was a grand banquet. The spectators on the viewing platforms didn't seem to be too interested in the banquet. They were all filled with anticipation for the disciples of their respective sects, hoping that they would be able to perform well. The first platform, Luo Qianqiu versus Hiyu. The second platform, Second Sword versus Bai Ming. The third platform, Third Knight versus Wang Xiao. The judges of the various martial academies all seemed to have a tacit understanding. The first name they called out was the name of the strongest seeded contender of this year's Junlin banquet. The 3 swords and 7 knights from Snowcloud Country didn't use their real names to register. Instead, they used Jian and Yi as their code names. The gazes of the spectators followed the direction of the voices, and very quickly, their gazes landed on the judge of the 9th platform. Jiang Xiu was extremely excited. According to the rules of the previous 8 platforms, the first name called out was always the strongest contender. In that case, the name called out this time should be him, right? The 9th platform, Jiang Xiu versus Qin Wentian. As the sound of the final announcement faded, Jiang Xiu's gaze abruptly froze as he stared at the judge of the 9th platform. The first name he called out was indeed Jiang Xiu, and the person he would be fighting against was actually Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian. After being stunned for a moment, the corners of Jiang Xiu's mouth curled up into a cold smile. This was the first battle of the Junlin banquet, the first time Jiang Xiu stood on the stage of the Junlin banquet. Similarly, it was also the first time for Qin Wentian, a genius divine inscriptionist who was praised by countless people, as well as a genius cultivator, was blasted off the platform in the cruelest and most direct manner, disappearing from the Junlin banquet. Such a scene would definitely be extremely interesting. Qin Wentian was also stunned. His eyes flickered as he stared at the judge of the 9th platform. This fellow couldn't be doing this intentionally, right? The first battle was against Jiang Xiu of the 10 prodigies. Although he was ranked last, there was no need to doubt his strength as a member of the 10 prodigies. The spectators were all stunned. Jiang Xiu and Qin Wentian's names were like thunder piercing through the ears. Both of them were extremely famous. One of them was one of the 10 prodigies, while the other was known as the most talented divine inscriptionist in the royal capital. At the same time, he also had an extremely high combat talent. They would clash against each other in the first battle. This 9th platform instantly attracted even more gazes compared to the first platform. At this moment, many people were thinking that Qin Wentian might be using the Junlin banquet as a tempering exercise. Could it be that this tempering exercise would end just like that? Wasn't this a little too ridiculous? That judge was also very interesting. However, nobody said anything. After all, the Junlin banquet was a competition of strength. The judge could choose any of the participants to battle. Remember to pay attention to your safety. Qin Yao didn't care about what the spectators were thinking. She helped Qin Wentian straighten his robes as she smiled. She didn't really care about Qin Wentian's victory or defeat, but he definitely had to walk out of this place unscathed. Good, don't disappoint us. Luo Huan giggled. The pressure of this battle was extremely great. Boss, it's all up to you now. Fan Lu grinned. Currently, Heaven's Wonder had yet to reveal Qin Wentian's name in the payout for the top 9 contenders. Even if it was, nobody would bet on Qin Wentian. Fatty had been waiting patiently. He didn't expect that the first opportunity would appear. As long as Qin Wentian defeated Jiang Xiu, Qin Wentian's name would immediately appear in Heaven's Wonders list. I will do my best. Qin Wentian smiled as he walked towards the 9th platform. An instant later he stood on it. Jiang Xiu also walked up the platform, appearing in front of Qin Wentian. At this moment, on the 9 towering platforms, 18 youths simultaneously ascended the stage of the Junlin banquet. From this moment onwards, the Junlin banquet would open a new chapter. Mo Qingqing Muro Yanaro, the Yi clan, the O clan, the Bai clan, the Divine Weapon Pavilion and the Star River Association. Their gazes were fixated on the two silhouettes on the 9th platform. Would Qin Wentian be eliminated in the first battle? An expression of interest appeared on Jiang Xiu's face. Not long ago, he had crossed swords with Qin Wentian. Although he had some strength, when a true battle erupted, Qin Wentian wouldn't stand a chance at all. Qin Wentian, on such a grand stage, under the gazes of so many people, a so-called genius like you would be eliminated in the first battle. Isn't it very interesting? Jiang Xiu indifferently asked. Qin Wentian didn't reply. He inclined his head slightly, staring at the skies. The sun rose from the east, slowly rising up until everyone could feel its radiance. The young man had walked all the way from the Sky Harmony City, experiencing countless hardships, experiencing countless life and death situations, before finally standing on the Junlin banquet in Chu. Today he would let the entire Chu country feel his radiance. Today he would once again prove himself in front of the entire Chu country. Mustang had once told him that a year from now, it would be the time for him to release his radiance. However, a year was too long, and he had to seize every minute. Today he stood here, not for anything else, but for the sake of obtaining first place. At this moment, the heart of the young man was as hot as the sun. Chapter 119. Qin Wentian stood there, inclining his head as he stared at the skies. The handsome face of the youth was filled with tranquility and indifference. That radiant smile on his face was filled with an intense self-confidence. The sunlight shone on his handsome face, adding to his beauty. At this moment, the youth of Qin Wentian seemed to possess a unique charm. What a handsome fellow! At this moment, at the location of the Mo clan, Mo Qingqing's father couldn't help but smile when he saw the radiant smile on the face of the youth. It's truly rare for the Qin clan to have such a son. This youth has walked through storms, and with his own hard work he finally stood on the greatest stage in Chu. Let's hope that he can create a miracle. The members of the Mo clan sent their blessings to Qin Wentian. I will. Mo Qingqing gently smiled. At this moment, Qin Wentian was truly good-looking. The spectators couldn't help but have strange expressions on their faces when they saw the smile on Qin Wentian's face. Could it be that he really didn't care that he would be blasted off the platform in the first battle, completely vanishing from the Junlin banquet? Or could it be that he was blindly confident that he would be able to defeat Jiang Xiu of the 10 prodigies? At this moment, an explosive sound rang out on the first towering platform. Luo Qianqiu defeated his opponent with a single punch. Because he didn't take the initiative to concede, his opponent was directly flung through the air after being struck by the lightning bolt. The bones in his body were all fractured, and his meridians were all crippled. This was the quickest battle, and Luo Qianqiu only spared his opponent's life. It was as though he was announcing to the crowd in the most tyrannical manner. This year's Junlin banquet was a stage that belonged to him. At the same time, on the 9th towering platform, Jiang Xiu's aura erupted forth as an intense sword qi held in rage. In his hands, a sword condensed from astral energy appeared. On the stage of the Junlin banquet, it was naturally forbidden to use divine weapons. If not, how could there be any fairness? A raging sword wind swept through the air as Jiang Xiu released his sword-type astral soul. Momentarily, the sword intent in his surroundings rose once again, becoming even more tyrannical. Ear-piercing sounds rang out as Jiang Xiu's aura continued to rise, all the way to the peak. Even though the crowd was far away, they could still feel the rising aura and sword intent. Their hearts trembled slightly. Jiang Xiu hadn't even started fighting, but he had already unleashed his strongest aura. He didn't hide any of his strength in preparation for the upcoming battle. There was no need to mention the confidence contained in his actions. At the same time, he wanted to announce to Qin Wentian that in front of Jiang Xiu, a so-called genius like him was nothing. He wanted to use the most tyrannical and direct method to crush Qin Wentian. He was Jiang Xiu, one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. The humiliation he suffered that day in the Emperor Star Academy would be repaid today. You still have a choice now. Leave this stage that doesn't belong to you. Do you want to get off the stage yourself, or do you want me to do it? Jiang Xiu said calmly, as if he intended to humiliate Qin Wentian. Within Qin Wentian's body, the 7 arterial pathways within his body erupted with power. The astral energy within his body seemed to be roaring, and his aura was similarly soaring. From today onwards, the name of Jiang Xiu will no longer be part of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Qin Wentian's voice slowly drifted out. Within the calmness of his voice, there was an unparalleled self-confidence. Such self-confidence caused the crowd to be taken aback. No one would have thought that in the face of the 10 prodigies, Qin Wentian would be able to say such words. From today onwards, the name of Jiang Xiu will no longer be part of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. 7th level of arterial circulation. In the direction of the Emperor Star Academy, a smile appeared on Mustang's face as he sensed the aura emanating from Qin Wentian. Speaking of which, he felt somewhat ashamed. This disciple of his had outstanding talent. Yet he hadn't taught Qin Wentian anything at all. For cultivation techniques, Qin Wentian already possessed them. For innate techniques, Qin Wentian was extremely proficient in them. This also caused Mustang to feel extremely depressed. He understood that this meant that based on his own capabilities, it was impossible for him to guide this disciple of his. He was unable to control Qin Wentian's talent, which was why such a situation had occurred. Naturally, Mustang was proud of Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian was the disciple he had discovered in the Sky Harmony City. Today, was Qin Wentian going to announce his existence to the entire Chu country? Mustang was filled with anticipation, as well as nervousness. Would Qin Wentian be able to defeat Jiang Xiu? When the crowd sensed Qin Wentian's aura, they were all taken aback. It was said that when he entered the Emperor Star Academy, he was only at the body refinement realm. In just a short span of a year, he had already broken through to the 7th level of arterial circulation. In addition to his achievements in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, even if he didn't perform well during the Junlin banquet, no one would doubt him too much. That was fate. He was already outstanding enough. His cultivation base at the 7th level of arterial circulation similarly stimulated Yizhan, Lu Yan, Bai Qingsong and Autumn Snow. Yizhan had once hunted down Qin Wentian, but now, they were no longer on the same level. Bai Qingsong and Autumn Snow also knew that a year ago, Qin Wentian wasn't at the body refinement realm. In reality, at that time, Qin Wentian had only just started cultivating. The other battles on the other platforms were quickly concluded. However, many people didn't notice that none of the other platforms could attract the attention of the crowd like the 9th platform. Not only because of the fame of the two of them, but also because of Jiang Xiu's pride, as well as Qin Wentian's self-confidence. Under the attentive gazes of the crowd, Jiang Xiu moved. In that instant, his sword was as cold as water. In an instant, his silhouette appeared in front of Qin Wentian. With a flick of his palms, his sword was like a meteor shower, blotting out the entire sky, resplendent and resplendent. Sword like a meteor shower, Jiang Xiu has already cultivated the Starpoint swordplay to such a high level. A single sword strike from him is more than enough to seal off all of Qin Wentian's escape routes, enveloping him in a rain of swords. No wonder he's one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Expressions of admiration appeared on the faces of the spectators as they stared at Jiang Xiu's astral sword. The 10 prodigies of the royal capital weren't just because of their fame. Since they were able to climb up the rankings, it meant that they had proven themselves before. Qin Wentian didn't move. He calmly stood there, as though what appeared in front of him wasn't a life-reaping sword. His countenance was as calm as ever, and there wasn't even a single astral weapon in his hands. Such a scene caused many to feel surprised. Was this self-confidence, or was it arrogance? Killing intent flickered in Jiang Xiu's eyes. Since Qin Wentian was courting death, he was willing to grant Qin Wentian his wish. If Qin Wentian died on the stage of the Junlin banquet, even if the Emperor Star Academy wanted to protect Qin Wentian, they wouldn't be able to say anything. The rain of swords contained a terrifying killing intent as they shot towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian could naturally feel that Jiang Xiu's killing intent had been aroused. At this moment, Qin Wentian released his perception to the maximum as a mysterious energy permeated the air. This was the Grand Dream Astral Soul. A sword-type astral soul would allow the astral energy in his body to be infused with the sharpness of the sword. A lightning-type astral soul would be infused with the savagery of thunder and lightning. Naturally, the Grand Dream Astral Soul would also be infused with the domain of dreams. In that instant, Jiang Xiu felt as though he was drifting and unreal. It was as though the attack of his sword was somewhat illusory. However, Qin Wentian was different from him. This was a power that belonged to him. Releasing the Grand Dream Astral Soul, Qin Wentian was immersed in his own domain, allowing him to better perceive everything. At the same time, he could also sense the rain of swords. Every sword strike was bone-chilling cold, as though it wanted to reap away the lives of his enemies. However, Qin Wentian's perception was able to clearly see the trajectory of every sword strike. His body finally moved. His entire body seemed to transform into an illusory shadow, drifting erratically in the air. Not only that, every step he took wasn't too big, but it was extremely ingenious as he shuttled through the rain of swords. It was as though the swords couldn't even touch his body. As his spirit moved, his body moved. 9 Heavenly Garuda Movement Technique, Divine Movement Realm. The countenance of the elder from the Emperor Star Academy stiffened. This was the highest realm of the 9 Heavenly Garuda Movement Technique, the Divine Movement Realm that surpassed the Perfection Realm. Seems like this young man's comprehension ability towards innate techniques has always been overshadowed by his talent in other aspects. They silently mused in their hearts. This was an innate technique that almost no one could cultivate. Qin Wentian, who was at the 7th level of the arterial circulation realm, had actually cultivated the arterial circulation technique to the pinnacle. The rain of swords actually had no way to land a hit on his body. A movement technique that had stepped into the divine movement realm was simply too perfect. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that in this Junlin banquet, Qin Wentian's movement technique was unparalleled. Jiang Xiu's countenance changed as he abruptly changed his stance. His sword intent continued to rise. However, at the instant he changed his stance, Qin Wentian's body also moved. Stomping on the ground, astral energy flowed through his arterial circulation to his legs. In that instant, his silhouette instantly appeared in front of Jiang Xiu. That terrifying speed caused Jiang Xiu to feel as though everything was surreal. At this moment, Jiang Xiu made an extremely decisive and wise move. He abandoned his sword. His sword directly transformed into astral light as he slashed out with his right palm. The sharpness of his attack was akin to that of a sword. If it landed on Qin Wentian's body, it would definitely be able to split Qin Wentian's body into 2. Slashing sword art. Although it isn't an extremely powerful innate technique, it's extremely useful in such a situation. Jiang Xiu's ability to adapt in a battle is extremely strong. Many in the crowd couldn't help but to praise. The spectators in the spectator stands were all people with vast knowledge and experience. Regarding innate techniques that weren't of a high level, they were all familiar with them, and had even come into contact with them before. Unless it was a high-level innate technique or a secret manual from a sect or clan, it would be extremely difficult to come into contact with it. Busy. Qin Wentian had long prepared his falling mountain palms as he blasted out. The falling mountain palms were extremely sharp, and were suitable for combat at a certain distance. Under such a close combat situation, the killing power of the falling mountain palms would definitely be extremely terrifying. In that instant, it was as though a mountain peak had smashed down on Jiang Xiu. The sharpness of the sword was instantly destroyed. The might of the falling mountain palms executed by Qin Wentian was so strong that it caused Jiang Xiu to feel as though he was suffocating. How could a cultivator at the 7th level of arterial circulation be able to execute such a powerful falling mountain palms? Crushing everything in its path, destroying everything in its path. This made Jiang Xiu feel as though he was in a dream. Jiang Xiu retreated, and at the same time he gathered a terrifying amount of energy. In that instant, boundless sword light converged together, transforming into a terrifying gigantic sword that slashed out towards the falling mountain palms. A thunderous sound rang out as the gigantic sword slammed into the descending falling mountain palms. The gigantic sword sliced through, but it was unable to break through. This caused Jiang Xiu's movements to falter for an instant. This instant was sufficient to determine everything. Qin Wentian waved his palms, and in that instant, a beam of sword light flashed past. Along with the sword light, a bloody glow appeared. My sword contains killing intent. I'll sever your sword-wielding arm. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, Jiang Xiu let out a blood-curdling scream as he retreated unceasingly. His left hand clutched onto his right arm as fresh blood flowed unceasingly, dripping onto the platform. One of his arms fell to the ground. Silence reigned in the air. My sword contains killing intent. I'll sever your sword-wielding arm. From today onwards, Jiang Xiu would no longer be part of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. However, Qin Wentian wasn't proficient in sword arts. Where did the sword light come from? Chapter 120. On the 9th towering platform of the Junlin banquet, the focus of everyone's attention. The ending of this battle was undoubtedly shocking. Ranked number 10 of the 10 prodigies, Jiang Xiu, had his right arm severed by Qin Wentian in a single strike. Just like what Qin Wentian had said, from now onwards, Jiang Xiu's name would no longer be part of the 10 prodigies. Who said that Qin Wentian was only participating in the Junlin banquet to temper himself? He only used a single battle to announce to the people of Chu that a year was too long. In this year's Junlin banquet, he would unleash his own brilliance. He used a single battle to announce who was the true king of the 9th towering platform. Jiang Xiu, who was the most favored on the 9th towering platform, a contender for the top 9 rankings, had been eliminated after a single battle. What was even more tragic was that he had lost an arm. How ironic was this? Those from the Emperor Star Academy thought even more deeply. Before this, Jiang Xiu had wanted to humiliate Qin Wentian in front of the Emperor Star Monument, saying that Qin Wentian's current achievements were all due to his good luck and fortuitous encounters. He, one of the 10 prodigies, actually looked down on Qin Wentian's achievements. However, in the short span of a month, the person he had doubted only used one battle and a few attacks to cut off his arm on the grandest stage. How could the title of the number 1 genius of the Emperor Star Academy be undeserved? In fact, the crowd could already foresee that from today onwards, Qin Wentian's talent would be reevaluated. Was he merely the number 1 genius of the Emperor Star Academy? This glory was far from enough. In the spectator stands, some of the more powerful people were silently analyzing the earlier battle. From a certain perspective, Jiang Xiu's strength had been severed before he could even unleash it. Qin Wentian's control of the rhythm of the battle was too fast, too perfect. Although Jiang Xiu had initiated the attack, the instant he executed the Garuda movement technique, the situation was already under Qin Wentian's control. No matter how powerful Jiang Xiu's sword techniques were, he had no chance to use them. Qin Wentian was like a natural-born combatant. He had an extremely acute sense of combat, grasping the moment of opportunity to seize victory. Such talent was truly terrifying. However, they couldn't understand Qin Wentian's earlier sword strike. Those from the major powers had investigated Qin Wentian before, but they had never heard of Qin Wentian using sword techniques before. Earlier, if he had used palm techniques or fist techniques, he wouldn't have been able to sever Jiang Xiu's arm in an instant. Only a sword technique would be able to do that. Actually, to Qin Wentian, who had comprehended the connection between innate techniques and divine imprints, as well as the ability to use divine imprints to condense his divine energy, it wasn't strange for him to be able to use a simple sword technique. He was too familiar with divine imprints, and he only needed an instant to condense the astral energy in his body into the shape of a sword. This was something unimaginable to others. But to Qin Wentian, it was extremely simple. In fact, he didn't even think about the sword light from earlier. At this moment, he was calmly looking at Jiang Xiu, as calm and indifferent as he was when he ascended the platform. It was as though what he had just done was an extremely simple and insignificant thing. He was very clear of his goal for participating in the Junlin banquet. Defeating Jiang Xiu wasn't something worthy of pride. Not only that, he didn't even defeat Jiang Xiu in his strongest state. Is there still a need to battle? Qin Wentian calmly spoke. He didn't use words to humiliate Jiang Xiu. That sword light from earlier was far more effective than any words he could say. Jiang Xiu's countenance was completely devoid of color. Only his arm was bleeding profusely. He was Jiang Xiu, one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. Today he was originally looking forward to displaying his dazzling radiance. However, the sad thing was that he only had a single chance to battle on the Junlin banquet. And that single chance was to sever his arm. Because the sword in his hand was filled with killing intent, Qin Wentian had severed it. How humiliating was that? At this moment, his entire body was trembling, especially when he saw the calm and indifferent expression in Qin Wentian's eyes. What else could he say? What else could he say? Turning around, Jiang Xiu walked down the platform. How much anticipation did he have for this Junlin banquet? However, there was only one chance. A smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face as he gazed at Jiang Xiu's back. Inclining his head slightly, he stared at the sun in the sky, before shifting his gaze onto the azure jadeite dragon seat. The crowd was stunned when they saw this. Qin Wentian seemed to want to say something. My name is Qin Wentian, son of Qin Chuan from the Qin clan of Sky Harmony City. My name is Qin Wentian. A radiant smile appeared on his face as Qin Wentian slowly spoke. It was unknown who he was speaking to, or why he was speaking. His name was Qin Wentian, son of Qin Wentian from the Qin clan of Sky Harmony City. This seemed to be a silent declaration. Chu Tianjiao saw Qin Wentian's gaze landing on him, his countenance as calm as still water. Was this a declaration to him? Qin Wentian wanted to prove himself through the Junlin banquet, so that Chu Tianjiao wouldn't dare to act recklessly against Qin Wu and Qin Chuan. Weakness and forbearance wouldn't allow others to notice your existence. Only with great strength and talent would others feel trepidation. Not only that, strength and talent would be able to bring about strong support, such as the Emperor Star Academy and the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Naturally, this was also a double-edged sword. When you radiated the light, those swords hidden in the shadows could stab you at any time. Qin Wentian turned and walked down the platform. Although he had only fought a single battle, it was as though he had let the spectators see him in a new light. That youth who had once stood amidst the wind and snow had a determination and tenacity that ordinary people didn't have. When did you learn sword-type innate techniques? Luo Huan smiled as she stared at Qin Wentian, her eyes flashing with a strange light. I was born with it. Qin Wentian shrugged as he jokingly replied. Your skin has grown thicker. Luo Huan's smile was exceptionally beautiful. This junior brother of hers, in the short span of a year, had already created an unimaginable miracle. Back then when she went to the Sky Harmony City to fetch Qin Wentian, she didn't expect that he would have such a glorious future a year later. Wentian, although your movement technique is powerful, the distance between you and the sword is too close. In the future, it's best to be more cautious when fighting. Qin Yao reminded Qin Wentian. Although Qin Wentian's movement technique was extremely powerful, she couldn't help but feel worried. After all, that rain of swords, each and every one of them contained a terrifying killing power. If Jiang Xiu's strength was slightly stronger, he would be able to unleash a sword attack that Qin Wentian wouldn't be able to evade. Got it, sis. Qin Wentian cupped Qin Yao's face as he smiled, causing Qin Yao to glare at him. However, a warm current flowed in her heart. Earlier, the words spoken by Qin Wentian on the platform had caused her heart to warm up. Where's that fellow Fanlu? Qin Wentian couldn't help but ask when he saw that Fanlu had disappeared. He went to the Drunken Wonder Pavilion to place his bet. Luo Huan couldn't help but blink her eyes when she heard Qin Wentian asking about Fanlu. That fellow was truly a weirdo. When he saw Qin Wentian defeating Jiang Xiu, he immediately went to the Drunken Wonder Pavilion, which was a branch of Heaven's Wonder. Talent. Qin Wentian rolled his eyes. This fatty really knew how to think of ideas. The battles on the 9 platforms were still ongoing, and it would continue for a long time. Because Qin Wentian had already fought a battle, he had plenty of time to rest. He had to wait until everyone on the 9th platform had finished their battles before it would be his turn to fight again. Although the judges had the authority to order the battles, they still had to take into account the number of times a contestant could fight. They couldn't allow a contestant to continue fighting just because they wanted to target a certain person. That would be unfair. Sikong Mingyue from Snowcloud, the second sword, the third sword, and the fifth knight of the 7 knights had all displayed their strength. However, they had yet to meet an opponent who was on par with them. Most probably, all of them were still concealing some of their true strength. After all, it was extremely rare for a dark horse like Qin Wentian to be able to defeat one of the 10 prodigies in his first battle. After the first round, the spectators had a basic understanding of the battles on the 9 platforms. The 9th platform, which seemed to be the weakest, was actually the one with the most intense battles. Many outstanding geniuses emerged from that platform, and it was the platform with the most intense battles. Even for those who could advance to the next round, it was still shrouded in mystery. Qin Wentian, who had defeated Jiang Xiu, had an extremely high possibility of occupying one of the 9 platforms. Although the 9th knight was a female, her strength was extremely powerful as well. She easily defeated an opponent who wasn't weak at all. Luo Cheng only used a single strike to chop off one of his opponent's arms. This caused the spectators to sigh in admiration at the ruthlessness of the Azura faction. Other than them, there were also some other powerful geniuses on the 9th platform. Luo Kaiyang from the Divine Wind Academy was also not bad. The opponent he defeated in the first round was someone who was highly regarded by the spectators. Yet he easily eliminated his opponent, leaving a deep impression on the spectators. However, only 2 people could advance to the next round on the 9th platform. This meant that these people would sooner or later clash against each other, and the weaker one would be eliminated. At this moment, Luo Kaiyang was in the midst of a crowd. Beside him, there was a beautiful young lady leaning against him as she smiled. Kaiyang, with your strength, you will definitely have a chance. Don't worry, little you, as long as I don't encounter Qin Wentian, 7th knight or Luo Cheng, I will do my best to advance to the next round. Luo Kaiyang nodded his head. The people he feared the most were Qin Wentian and 7th knight. Qin Wentian had defeated Jiang Xiu, and 7th knight had no idea how strong she was. Lin Yu smiled as she nodded her head. So this beautiful young lady from the Divine Wind Academy was none other than one of the 4 great beauties of the Sky Harmony City, Lin Yu. Now that she was nearing the age of 17, she was even more charming than before, and was currently in a relationship with the young genius from the Divine Wind Academy, Luo Kaiyang. They're calling the names. Luo Kaiyang's gaze shifted to the platform, and not long after, his voice reached the direction of the 9th platform as the judge announced in a loud voice. The 9th platform, Qin Wentian vs. Luo Kaiyang. As the sound of the judge's voice faded, the spectators froze for a moment before smiles appeared on their faces. Was this judge doing this to increase the viewing pleasure of the spectators? Or did he have a grudge against Qin Wentian? The countenances of Luo Kaiyang and Lin Yu froze. The second battle, against Qin Wentian. Chapter 121. Qin Wentian. Lin Yu's countenance changed, her countenance unsightly. How could this be? Based on Luo Kaiyang's combat prowess, he should have been able to advance very far. She had hoped that Luo Kaiyang would meet Qin Wentian as late as possible. But this was only the second battle, and Luo Kaiyang was already fighting against Qin Wentian. It's Lin Yu. Qin Yao noticed Luo Kaiyang standing beside Lin Yu. As Qin Wentian shifted his gaze, a strange expression involuntarily appeared on his face. A year ago, he was still in Sky Harmony City, and at that time, he had a small conflict with Lin Yu. Kaiyang, be careful. Lin Yu reminded. She didn't expect that in a year's time, she would be in contact with Qin Wentian, not to mention that they were in such a situation. The participants of the 9 towering platforms all walked up. Qin Wentian and Luo Kaiyang stood on the 9th platform. Luo Kaiyang stared at Qin Wentian with a heavy expression. He released both of his astral souls without any hesitation. His first astral soul was actually a suit of armor, which enveloped his body in a layer of astral light. Luo Kaiyang's first astral soul was a defense-type astral soul, which allowed his body's defensive capabilities to be extremely high. When an attack landed on his body, it could even reduce the impact of the impact. His second astral soul was even more resplendent. It was a gigantic axe, a powerful attack-type astral soul. Luo Kaiyang's choice of astral soul had evidently been carefully crafted by himself. An attack-type great axe, coupled with a defense-type armor, could be used for both offense and defense. Please. Luo Kaiyang held onto the astral great axe in his hands, as he made a gesture of invitation to Qin Wentian. Please. Qin Wentian returned the gesture, as an astral hammer materialized in his hands. Since Luo Kaiyang was proficient in both offense and defense, he was willing to use offense as defense. His astral souls were obviously superior to Luo Kaiyang's, although his cultivation base was slightly lower. However, the spectators seemed to have forgotten about Qin Wentian's cultivation base, and treated him as someone at the 9th level of arterial circulation. This was because he had defeated Jiang Xiu, one of the 10 prodigies of the capital. In that battle, Qin Wentian won because of his superior body movements, his innate judgment, and that wonderful sword move at the end. However, it was still unknown how strong Qin Wentian really was. Therefore, many people were paying attention to this battle. Would Qin Wentian continue to win to consolidate his position in the hearts of the people? Luo Kaiyang moved. Although he didn't have an agility-type astral soul, his speed was still extremely fast. However, no matter how fast he was still not as fast as Qin Wentian's 9 Heavens Rock skill. Qin Wentian was even faster than him. Suddenly, the hammer smashed down with an incomparably domineering momentum. The divine energy within his body erupted forth. This was the divine energy condensed from the astral energy of the 5th heavenly layer, causing a rumbling sound to echo out in the air. Luo Kaiyang didn't want to be outdone. He wildly chopped out with his axe. The 9 forms of splitting mountain had boundless power. Bang! The terrifying energies collided against each other, as the astral energy transformed into a tempest. Their gazes met, and Luo Kaiyang only felt a beam of light shooting out from Qin Wentian's eyes. In that instant he felt drowsy, as though he wanted to fall asleep and enter into a dream. And in that dream, Qin Wentian was like a primordial giant with boundless strength. What's going on? Luo Kaiyang felt a surge of terror in his heart, only to see Qin Wentian's giant hammer smashing down once again. His 9 forms of splitting mountain was thrown into disarray, and he could only lift his axe to defend. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Continuous violent attacks rained down, causing the crowd to be stunned. Why did the battle suddenly become so violent? At this moment, the berserk Qin Wentian's attack speed was so fast that it shocked the spectators. After Luo Kaiyang lost the initiative, there was no way for him to recover. Regardless of attack speed or movement speed, he couldn't compare to Qin Wentian. Not only that, his strength wasn't enough to turn the situation around in an instant. Lin Yu paled when she saw this scene. She shouted, "Kaiyang, concede." Luo Kaiyang gritted his teeth, feeling unwillingness in his heart. But at this instant, the mountain-like giant hammer smashed down once again, shattering the astral great axe in his hands. Luo Kaiyang's countenance was deathly pale as he stared blankly at the descending giant hammer. Even though he had an extremely powerful defense, the impact of the giant hammer was sufficient to shatter his brain. No. Lin Yu's countenance paled as her eyes reddened. She didn't dare to imagine what would happen next. The giant hammer continued to descend, but just as it was about to smash into Luo Kaiyang's head, it abruptly transformed into a constellation of astral light, disappearing from sight. Time seemed to have stopped for an instant. Beads of perspiration dripped down from Luo Kaiyang's forehead. His gaze landed on Qin Wentian, only to see a radiant smile on Qin Wentian's face. Luo Kaiyang couldn't help but feel a sense of heartfelt admiration in his heart. Luo Kaiyang bowed slightly to Qin Wentian as he stated, "Although I'm inferior to you, there will definitely be a place for you in the top 9 rankings of the Junlin banquet. Thank you for letting me win." Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head. After which, Luo Kaiyang walked down the platform. The victor of this battle was Qin Wentian. Seeing Luo Kaiyang walking down the platform, Qin Wentian's countenance was as calm as still water. Subconsciously, he cast a glance at Lin Yu who was in front of him. At this moment, Lin Yu's heart was pounding rapidly. Staring at the smiling youth, she suddenly felt a sense of inferiority. She bowed slightly to Qin Wentian from afar. I'm sorry for what happened in the past. Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head. Although the words spoken by Lin Yu were somewhat unpleasant to the ears, it was merely the willfulness of youth. It wasn't worth it to hold a grudge in his heart. Seems like this young lady once had a conflict with Qin Wentian. The spectators sighed in their hearts when they saw this scene. Not bad. In the direction of the Emperor Star Academy, Mustang smiled as he nodded his head. The more he looked at this disciple, the more satisfied he was with him. Qin Wentian walked down the platform. However, at this moment, the spectators already saw him as one of the strongest contenders for the top 9 rankings of the Junlin banquet. Luo Kaiyang's strength could already be considered not bad. However, when facing against Qin Wentian, he had no way to retaliate at all. Not only that, the spectators still couldn't see through Qin Wentian's true combat prowess. In these two battles, the spectators could only see his talent for combat. It was as though it was an innate ability, and his grasp of opportunities and control of the battle was extremely perfect. Although those two battles appeared to be extremely simple, Qin Wentian himself seemed to have the talent to turn complexity into simplicity. The following battles were as fascinating as ever. Occasionally there would be intense collisions. However, after that, Qin Wentian didn't encounter any opponents that were too strong. Relying on his astral warhammer and his tyrannical movement techniques, he was able to completely suppress his opponents. Time slowly flowed by, and the battles on the 9 towering platforms gradually intensified. The judges on each of the platforms seemed to have intentionally left the most intense battles to the end. Even for the 18 most favored contenders, they were facing extremely difficult challenges. Although other than Jiang Xiao, none of the other contenders were eliminated, it wasn't so easy for them to obtain victory. Only Luo Qianqiu, Xikong Mingyue, Second Sword, Third Knight, and the rest were able to suppress their opponents with arrogance. The winter sun shifted from the east to the west. Its warmth still enveloped the land. At this moment, the battles on 3 of the towering platforms had already ended. As for the other 6 towering platforms, only a few people remained. Not only that, the judges directly allowed the remaining contenders to ascend the platforms together. It seemed that the first round of the Junlin banquet would soon conclude. 8th towering platform, 6th Knight, Luo Huan Yiji Yufei, come up together. At this moment, the judge of the 8th towering platform spoke. There were only 4 contenders left on this platform. 6th Knight and Yi Ji, ranked 7th of the 10 prodigies, were 2 of the most favored contenders. Luo Huan and Yu Fei also had payout rates from Heaven's Wonder, but the payout rate for them to enter the top 9 was extremely high. Evidently, Heaven's Wonder didn't think highly of them. If there were no accidents, the next round would be 6th Knight and Yi Ji fighting against Luo Huan and Yu Fei respectively. Not only that, both Luo Huan and Yu Fei were students of the Emperor Star Academy. 9th towering platform, 7th Knight, Qin Wentian, Luo Cheng come up. The judge of the 9th towering platform slowly spoke. There were only 3 contenders left on the 9th platform. Because there were 6 contenders in the first round, they had all defeated their opponents, resulting in such a situation. In that case, between 7th Knight, Qin Wentian, and Luo Cheng, one of them had to be eliminated. Although 7th Knight is a female, her combat prowess is extremely high. She should be able to advance to the next round. Luo Cheng's saber light is extremely sharp and ruthless. His combat prowess shouldn't be any weaker than Jiang Xiao. If the judge allows him to fight against Qin Wentian, he should have a 30% chance of victory. Many mused in their hearts. They felt that Qin Wentian had a higher chance of advancing to the next round, but it wouldn't be so easy for him to deal with the crazy Luo Cheng. Everyone had seen those duels time and time again. Luo Cheng's performance was naturally seen by them too. 8th towering platform, 6th Knight against Yu Fei and Yi Ji against Luo Huan. The platform is large enough, let's fight them at the same time. The judge of the 8th towering platform spoke, his words causing the eyes of the spectators to gleam with sharpness. 2 exciting battles were going to proceed at the same time. Indeed, as expected, the judge allowed the 6th Knight and Yi Ji to fight against Yu Fei and Luo Huan respectively. 6th Knight against Yu Fei was a battle between males. Yi Ji against Luo Huan, 2 beauties, caused the spectators to be filled with anticipation. Ninth towering platform, the three of you will fight at the same time. Whoever gets off the platform first will be eliminated. A voice abruptly rang out, causing expressions of interest to appear on the faces of the spectators. This judge was truly daring. He actually allowed Qin Wentian, Luo Cheng, and Seventh Knight to engage in a chaotic battle. What if two of them decided to work together to deal with the other one? This judge was truly capricious. Maybe he didn't want anyone to advance to the next round because of a bye, which was why he came up with this idea. Chapter 122. Seventh Night, Qin Wentian and Luo Cheng formed a triangular formation as they stood on the ninth towering platform. Seventh Night was a young lady with beautiful features. She had a smile on her face, and there was no need to doubt her strength since she was able to become one of the 7 Knights of Snowcloud at such a young age. The twin prides, 3 swords and 7 knights were like the 10 prodigies of Snowcloud, except that Snowcloud had a more specific classification. The talent of the twin prides was the highest. The 3 swords were all sword arts geniuses, and 7 knights each had their own unique points. The two of you can't bully weak girls. Seven Knight cast a glance at Qin Wentian and Luo Cheng, as a smile appeared on her face. It was as though people couldn't bear to make a move against her, and it was easy to be deceived by her smile during combat. One of you can step down, Luo Cheng calmly stated, causing Seventh Knight to be startled. After which she laughed. Since you are so confident, why don't the two of you fight it out and eliminate one of you? Luo Cheng's countenance didn't change, but the aura exuding from his body turned violent and sharp. The aura of the 8th level of arterial circulation gushed forth, and it was still rising. 9th level of arterial circulation. Luo Cheng's aura directly broke through the restrictions of the 8th level of arterial circulation, stepping into the 9th level. Before this, he had been concealing his cultivation base, suppressing it to the 8th level. But even so, he still managed to advance all the way to this stage. On the platform, only he, Seventh Knight and Qin Wentian remained. No wonder Luo Cheng is so confident. When he was at the 8th level of arterial circulation, he relied on his ruthlessness and rich combat experience to have the ability to fight against those of a higher level. Now that he's at the 9th level of arterial circulation, his combat prowess would definitely rise to another level, and he would definitely be stronger than Jiang Xiao of the 10 prodigies. The spectators all speculated. If that was the case, it wouldn't be so strange for Luo Cheng to say that Seventh Knight would fight against Qin Wentian, eliminating one of them. Seeing Luo Cheng's cultivation base, Seventh Knight stuck out her tongue. After which she turned to Qin Wentian and smiled. He wants us to fight, what do you think? If you want my opinion, of course, I hope that the two of you will fight each other and eliminate one of you. Qin Wentian replied with a smile, causing Seventh Knight to reveal a bitter look on her face. You two big men, aren't you ashamed to ask me to fight? Luo Cheng and Qin Wentian didn't say anything. It seemed that they were both waiting. Alright, since all of you want me to fight, I'll fight. Seventh Knight seemed a little wronged. She smiled at Qin Wentian and said, I'll fight you first. You have to go easy on me. Qin Wentian smiled but didn't say anything. On the stage of the Junlin banquet, he didn't believe in such a smile. Seventh Knight lifted her feet and slowly walked towards Qin Wentian, not releasing her astral souls. Although she had experienced many battles, Seventh Knight had yet to meet someone who could pose a threat to her. Every time she encountered an intense battle, she would always be able to defeat her opponent in the end. Those who could reach this stage of the Junlin banquet couldn't be underestimated. Not to mention that Seventh Knight was one of the 7 Knights of Snowcloud. And at this moment, Qin Wentian only felt an illusion appearing in front of him. In his vision, the silhouette of Seventh Knight seemed to have blurred as several Seventh Knights appeared in front of him. The instant this illusion appeared, Qin Wentian felt a sense of danger. Was this the ability that Seventh Knight's astral soul had bestowed upon her? Qin Wentian had tried many times to infuse the power of his astral soul into his innate techniques. How could he not understand what he was facing at this moment? He directly closed his eyes, not bothering to look at the gaze of Seventh Knight. Seventh Knight blasted out with her palm. Instantly, It was as though an ice python was about to devour Qin Wentian. Its speed as fast as lightning. Qin Wentian's footsteps trembled as he executed the Garuda movement technique, dodging to the side. Seventh Knight followed closely behind Qin Wentian. An intense chill emanated from her, causing Qin Wentian to involuntarily shiver. It was extremely cold. The temperature of the surrounding air plummeted rapidly. Ice spears abruptly pierced through the air, enveloping the entire space in front of them. Each and every ice spear was filled with an aura of sharpness. The whistling sound of the wind seemed to be a testament to the power of their attacks. Seventh Knight knew that Qin Wentian was proficient in grasping opportunities. Hence, the moment she made her move, she firmly grasped the initiative and launched a ferocious attack towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's body was already covered with a layer of frost. In the 2 battles he had won against Jiang Xiao and Luo Kaiyang, he had firmly grasped the initiative, not giving his opponents any chance to retaliate. However, the woman he was currently fighting against was far more intelligent than what he had imagined. Behind that adorable smile of hers was a deep scheming heart. The divine energy in his arterial circulation pathways seethed. Qin Wentian abruptly halted his steps as he stomped fiercely on the ground. With a roar of rage, the 3rd stance of the Thousand Hands imprint, the Forgotten imprint, blasted out. A terrifying palm imprint roared as the ice spears collided with the palm imprint. Both of them crumbled at the same time. However, Seventh Knight's actions didn't stop. Her eyes were filled with a smile as she stared at Qin Wentian. At the same time, she stretched out her palms, as numerous ice pythons coiled around each other as they flew towards Qin Wentian. At this moment, Qin Wentian's eyes abruptly opened as a terrifying aura gushed forth. In that instant, Seventh Knight felt as though she had sunk into a dreamscape, causing her mental state to be stimulated. The revolving sea imprint continuously erupted forth from Qin Wentian's palms. The terrifying aura caused Seventh Knight's body to flutter backwards, giving up on the idea of continuing the battle. Moments later, she returned to her original position. "Awesome, I'm not playing with you anymore." Seventh Knight laughed, as she turned her gaze towards Luo Cheng. "Oi, I've already exchanged blows with him. Don't you want to try as well, to be fair?" Seventh Knight shouted. This Seventh Knight is truly interesting. The crowd laughed. The feeling that Seventh Knight gave them wasn't that of a peerless genius. Instead, she seemed more like an ignorant and lively young girl. Luo Cheng turned his gaze over, as his eyes landed on Qin Wentian. After which, he started walking towards Qin Wentian, as the astral light curved blade appeared in his hands. His body lunged forward, yet the blade in his hands didn't move at all. He didn't unleash any innate techniques, and was still tightly gripping onto it. The distance between him and Qin Wentian grew closer and closer. As the saying goes, taking the initiative to gain the initiative. However, both Luo Cheng and Qin Wentian seemed to be using silence to counter attacks. At this moment, both of them didn't unleash any innate techniques, but this also meant that they could change their moves as they pleased. Seeing that Qin Wentian still didn't move, Luo Cheng's brows twitched as his eyes turned as sharp as the edge of a blade. His blade finally blossomed. However, it wasn't a direct slash, but a slash from the bottom upwards. This was an extremely difficult path to dodge, and if Qin Wentian wanted to evade, he had to twist his body. Bzzz. A raging wind gusted by, only to see Qin Wentian's body rising from the ground as he stepped into the air. At the same time, the energy gathered in his palms instantly gushed forth. With his perfect astral meridians, the speed of his attacks was incomparably fast. Soaring through the air? The countenances of the crowd froze. Behind Qin Wentian, there seemed to be an illusory pair of Garuda wings. This fellow must have condensed the Garuda imprint. And most probably, he had killed many demonic beasts before. Luo Cheng's countenance changed. The edge of his blade blossomed in the air as he violently slashed out. With a thunderous boom, his body was forced back a few steps. Boom. Behind him, a palm imprint directly slammed into Luo Cheng's body. Instantly, Luo Cheng's body was covered in a layer of ice. His countenance paled as an expression of unwillingness flickered in his eyes. "Sorry, do you want to admit defeat?" Seventh Knight giggled. Luo Cheng's entire body was shivering from the cold. Qin Wentian stood in front of him, calmly looking at him, not taking the opportunity to act. Luo Cheng naturally knew that whether he wanted to admit defeat or not, it was no longer up to him. I admit defeat. Luo Cheng spoke. Only then did Seventh Knight release him. She moved her palm away, allowing Luo Cheng to regain his mobility. Turning his head, he stared at Seventh Knight as he spoke. No matter what, you are from Snowcloud. Is there any meaning to using such a method to win? Of course there is. This way, I can advance to the next round and fight against even stronger opponents. How could there be no meaning to it? Seventh Knight giggled, causing Luo Cheng to be speechless. Filled with unwillingness, Luo Cheng walked down the platform. From now on, the two who advanced to the next round were Qin Wentian and Seventh Knight. Oi, in the next round. Let's see who's the real deal. Seventh Knight giggled as she stared at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's lips curled up in a smile as he nodded. I'll be waiting for you. Okay. Seventh Knight laughed as she shifted her gaze onto the 8th platform. At this moment, the battle between 6th Knight and Yu Fei was the victor. The battle between Luo Huan and Yi Ji was unexpected. Luo Huan was the victor. Those from the Emperor Star Academy are truly not to be trifled with. It's such a pity that Luo Cheng lost. The battle between Yu Fei and 6th Knight was extremely intense. Luo Huan actually concealed her true strength and defeated Yi Ji, ranked 7th of the 10 prodigies. The spectators sighed in their hearts. The battle between Luo Huan and Yi Ji earlier had caused many to be stunned. As the 7th of the 10 prodigies, Yi Ji's strength naturally wasn't weak. In fact, she had also unleashed an extremely tyrannical strength, but she was still defeated. The reason for her defeat was naturally clear to the spectators. Luo Huan's dual astral souls weren't simple at all. And now, on the 9 platforms of the Junlin banquet, the 18 participants had all appeared. The majority of the participants were the same as what the spectators had predicted. However, there were still 3 dark horses. Qin Wentian defeated Jiang Xiao. Luo Huan defeated Yi Ji. Gu Xing, a cold-looking youth, appeared on the 6th platform. He defeated 5th Knight. And now, the 18 participants were 11 from Chu, Luo Qianqiu, Orkan, Qin Wentian and Luo Huan from the Emperor Star Academy, Ho Tai and Lengya from the Godly General Martial Palace, Shi Jun and Chu Chen from the Royal Academy, Jiang Feng from the Divine Wind Academy, Kuang Sheng from the Mad Blade Sect, and Gu Xing from an unknown origin. 7 from Snowcloud, Xikong Mingyue from the Duo Prides, 2nd Sword, 3rd Knight, 4th Knight, 6th Knight and 7th Knight. The participants from Snowcloud were all elites. Although they didn't bring many people with them, almost all of them had passed the 2nd round. Next, among these 18 participants, half of them would be eliminated, leaving only 9 behind. These 9 participants would be the top 9 of the Junlin banquet, and would be rewarded accordingly. At this moment, the Drunken Wonder had already reshuffled the cards, and revealed the payout rates for the top 9 participants. Luo Qianqiu and Xikong Mingyue didn't appear on the list of bets. This meant that the 2 of them would definitely be ranked within the top 9. Qin Wentian's name had also appeared on the list. The payout rate for Qin Wentian being ranked within the top 9 was 1-4. Although the payout rate seemed very low, it was evident that Heaven's Wonder didn't believe in Qin Wentian. If not, 9 out of the 18 participants would pass the 3rd round. The payout rate was 1-4. Evidently, Heaven's Wonder wasn't optimistic about Qin Wentian's chances. After all, the participants in this round were all elites, and Luo Qianqiu and Xikong Mingyue had already secured 2 of the top 9 spots. Not only that, Orkan, 2nd Sword, 3rd Knight and the 6th prodigy Jiang Feng would also obtain 5 spots if there were no accidents. Hence, the competition for the other participants would definitely be extremely intense. As for the payout rate for the top 9 spots, the payout rate for Qin Wentian was so high that it was terrifying. 1-400. If you bet a single astral meteor stone, and Qin Wentian obtained the top position, you would receive 400 yuan meteor stones from Heaven's Wonder. Evidently, Heaven's Wonder didn't view Qin Wentian as one of the top contenders. Chapter 123. In the Chu Emperor District, the sky had already darkened. seated on the azure jadeite dragon seat. Chu Tianjiao glanced at the sky as he spoke. It's getting late, let's end the banquet here. I'm sure the Junlin banquet tomorrow will be even more spectacular. After speaking, Chu Tianjiao stood up. Although he wasn't old, he appeared to be extremely mature. Those from the royal clan grew up in the midst of scheming, and were naturally more mature compared to their peers. As the sound of Chu Tianjiao's voice faded, the representatives from the various powers all stood up and toasted Chu Tianjiao. After a toast, Chu Tianjiao left the banquet table, laughing and chatting with those beside him. Qin Wentian gazed at the departing Chu Tianjiao. He could faintly sense that when Chu Tianjiao walked, he was actually half a step behind the person beside Luo Qianqiu. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to notice this change, but because Qin Wentian knew who the person beside Luo Qianqiu was, he paid extra attention to it. The Nine Mystical Palace was the supreme power behind Chu, Snowcloud, and the other 10 countries. Even if only a few of them came to Chu, their statuses would be comparable to the future emperor of Chu. Chu Tianjiao didn't dare to offend them. Qin Wentian naturally understood why the Nine Mystical Palace had such great influence. A sect that was above the royal clan, and even the empires. There was no other reason than strength. The higher Wuxia ascended, the more terrifying his strength would be, and the greater the disparity between him and those below him. Hence, there were many Yuanfu cultivators in Chu, and countless arterial circulation cultivators. However, the great hurdle of Yuanfu was exceedingly rare. As for those who had the ability to step into Heavenly Dipper, they had already left Chu. Chu was too small, and couldn't accommodate them. Hence, they either joined the Nine Mystical Palace, or joined other powers similar to the Nine Mystical Palace. What are you thinking about? Unknowingly, Mu Rou appeared beside Qin Wentian. Noticing Qin Wentian's gaze, she couldn't help but smile. Nothing. It seems that you are in a good mood. Qin Wentian revealed a warm smile when he saw Mu Rou. I still have to thank you. Only now did I know that Senior Ram was an extraordinary character. Many years ago, he was the champion of the Junlin banquet, and now, he has extremely high achievements in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. Because of that painting of yours, I received a promise from Senior Ram, which helped me greatly. Mu Rou gently spoke. She didn't explain too clearly, but Qin Wentian could already guess what she meant. It's just a gift for your birthday. Don't take it to heart, or else it would mean that you don't treat me as a friend. Qin Wentian intentionally spoke, causing Mu Rou's eyelashes to flutter, adding to her beauty. This fellow seemed to be able to cause people to feel a faint warmth in their hearts. What about my birthday? Are you going to give me a present too? At this moment, a mischievous voice drifted over. Qin Wentian turned his head and saw the silhouette of Mo Qingqing. The beautiful girl had a faint smile on her face, and it was as if a ray of sunshine had been imprinted in people's hearts. What do you want? Qin Wentian laughed. I have to think about it carefully. I can't waste a gift from a third-level divine inscriptionist. Mo Qingqing pretended to be deep in thought, appearing extremely adorable. The spectators who had yet to disperse were all envious of Qin Wentian. This fellow was truly lucky with women, surrounded by beauties. Luo Huan, Qin Yao, and Mu Rou were all extremely beautiful. In addition to the number one beauty of Chu, Mo Qingqing, Qin Wentian's treatment was truly something to be jealous of. Don't make things too difficult for me. Qin Wentian shrugged as he stared at the expression on Mo Qingqing's face. Don't worry, just remember this. Mo Qingqing laughed. Work hard tomorrow. I'm very optimistic about your performance. After speaking, Mo Qingqing smiled and departed. Mu Rou, who was at the side, stared at her departing back as a strange feeling surfaced in her heart. Being together with Mo Qingqing, even if she had a pretty face, she would still be overshadowed by Mo Qingqing. In the spectator stands, Autumn Snow gazed at the young man in the distance, her countenance extremely complicated. The young man who was once engaged to her was despised and abandoned by her. Now, there seemed to be no lack of beauties who were more outstanding than her by his side. Based on his talent and strength, the distance between them would only grow further and further in the future. That night outside the Bai residence, the resolute voice of the young man was still the same. Those casual words of his, were gradually becoming reality. Autumn Snow, let's go. Bai Qingsong, who was at the side, spoke. Autumn Snow nodded her head lightly as she left together with her father. Many of the spectators dispersed, preparing to find a place to rest for the night. However, there were still many who didn't leave, intending to stay the night and wait for the commencement of the Junlin banquet the next day. Boss, do you want to go shopping together? Fan Lu narrowed his eyes as he stared at Qin Wentian. Heaven's Wonder has set a payout rate of 1/400. Why don't you go and bet a few yuan meteor stones? Although the chances are slim, what if your luck is really heaven-defying? Such a high payout rate? Qin Wentian was startled. From the start, Heaven's Wonder simply didn't think highly of him. However, it was understandable. With Luo Qianqiu, Xikong Mingyue and the other experts present, it would be extremely difficult for him to kill his way to the top of the Junlin banquet. Today, standing on the stage of the Junlin banquet, Qin Wentian didn't dare to say that he would definitely be able to become the top ranker. They are looking down on you. Fatty shrugged his shoulders, as though he was intentionally trying to provoke Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian stared at Fan Lu as he stated, "Go and play by yourself, I'm preparing to consolidate my cultivation." After which, Qin Wentian bade farewell to the surrounding spectators before riding on Little Rascal's back and departing the area, akin to a white whirlwind. Royal Capital Bamboo Lodge. At this moment, a white-haired silhouette was currently sitting by the riverbank, angling for fish. The sound of the flowing water caused people to feel a sense of tranquility. "Why are you so free to come here?" the old man asked in a low voice. He already knew that Qin Wentian had arrived behind him. "The Junlin banquet has just ended, so I came here to see if Senior is doing well." Qin Wentian sat down beside Gong Hong. It had already been a long time since Gong Hong's hair had turned white overnight. Qin Wentian was still somewhat worried. After all, Gong Hong's condition that day was extremely poor. "You are truly considerate." A smile appeared in Gong Hong's cloudy eyes. Compared to the time when Qin Wentian met him in the Royal Academy, the current him looked much older. The Junlin banquet is the grandest event in Chu. You should focus on your cultivation. If you can obtain the top 9 rankings, you would be able to obtain rewards. And if you can obtain the first position, you would be able to step into the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. Gong Hong calmly replied. Although it had been a long time since he paid attention to such matters, he had grown up in the royal capital of Chu during his youth. Naturally, he knew many things. For a night's time, I can cultivate here at Senior's place. Qin Wentian smiled. Previously, Senior warned me that if there's a girl I like, I must not miss her. I'm thinking that Senior must have some regrets in the past. Since you have regrets, why don't you try to make up for it? Make up for it? How can I make up for it? Gong Hong shook his head. Without trying, how would Senior know? Even if I can't make up for it, why don't I try? This doesn't seem to match Senior's warning. Didn't Senior tell me not to miss out on the opportunity to make up for it? Qin Wentian smiled as he spoke. Gong Hong slowly turned his gaze over. Staring at the radiant smile on the young man's face, his heart involuntarily trembled. Once upon a time, he was also like Qin Wentian, a graceful youth. But now he was no different from a dead man. Time was truly the cruelest existence in the world. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over. As a radiant smile appeared on his face, he spoke to Gong Hong. I'm sure Senior must be thinking that if he could return to the time when he was young, he wouldn't have wasted his life. But in reality, for cultivators, as long as one's cultivation base is strong enough, they would be able to return to their youth. Given Senior's current age, you can't be considered old at all. If you are lamenting about the time you missed out on, would you be lamenting about the time you missed out on today? As Qin Wentian spoke, he stared at the towering mountain peak in front of him as he continued in a low voice. How many people regret the time they lost? But how many people truly want to change? If they want to change, why not seize the present? The past has already passed. The future is too far away. Only focus on the present. The past has passed. The future is too far away. Only focus on the present. Qin Wentian's words caused huge waves to surge in Gong Hong's heart. How could a young man say such words? There was a moment of silence, and only the sound of flowing water could be heard. It was exceptionally peaceful. Ultimately, I'm still inferior to a young man. Gong Hong sighed, as he stood up and slowly walked towards the direction of his hut. It was as though an intense struggle was taking place in his heart. What he missed out on, could he still make up for it today? Qin Wentian didn't follow him. The knot in Gong Hong's heart still needed to be unraveled by himself. He only felt that Gong Hong's powerful cultivation base was something that countless people would be envious of. Why couldn't he cherish what he had now, and do what he wanted to do to make up for his regrets? Even if he failed, he had tried his best. Retrieving a few yuan meteor stones from his interspatial ring, Qin Wentian closed his eyes as he sat there, and began his cultivation, instantly entering the dreamscape. Astral light revolved around his body, and as the night grew darker, the stars in the night sky were as bright as ever. Rays of light cascaded down onto the body of the young man, flowing through the river. Far away, on the roof of the hut, Gong Hong sat there, basking in the starlight as he stared at the young man by the river. A quiet smile could be seen on his face. This young man was even more outstanding compared to him in the past. How could he not like such a young man? I'll leave after the Junlin banquet. Let's see if you are able to dominate the world today. Gong Hong smiled as he spoke. It was as though a ray of light shone in his heart. At this moment, he seemed to have let go of his burdens, and his entire person felt relaxed. Chapter 124. Qin Wentian cultivated for a night in the bamboo house, and left early the next morning. The second round of the Junlin banquet would be held today, and before the sun had even risen, the Chu Emperor district was already filled with countless silhouettes. Not far away from the Chu Emperor district, in the Drunken Wonder branch of Heaven's Wonder, there were also many silhouettes gathered there. In the center of the Drunken Wonder's great hall, there was a gigantic dragon-shaped jade table that exuded an air of nobility. Although it was somewhat unsophisticated, this was still a casino. There were 18 positions on the dragon-shaped jade table, and each position had a name inscribed on it. These were the names of the 18 participants that had advanced to the second round of the Junlin banquet. Next to the names were the odds for these people to advance to the next round's top 9, top 3, and first place respectively. All three odds were clearly written. The payout rate for Luo Qianxiu to become the champion is actually 1, 2. Such a low payout rate shows how highly Heaven's Wonder regards Luo Qianxiu. I wonder why Heaven's Wonder has so much faith in Luo Qianxiu. Some people silently speculated, but there were still many who bet on Luo Qianxiu to become the champion. Although the payout rate was low, it still showed that the probability of Luo Qianxiu becoming the champion was very high. However, there were some who thought differently. They felt that Heaven's Wonder might have intentionally set such a low payout rate to mislead the crowd. Many people would bet on Luo Qianxiu, and if he didn't obtain first place, the biggest winner would naturally be Heaven's Wonder. At this moment, beside the dragon-shaped jade table, there were two elegant young masters. One of them was holding onto a wine gourd, and it was clear that the wine was extremely good. The people around him weren't that crowded, and no one was too close to him. This was a formless form of respect, because the identity of this person was extraordinary. He was the third-ranked prodigy of the royal capital, Immortal Drunken Wine. The payout rate for this fellow is truly tragic. Immortal Drunken Wine lowered his head, as a smile appeared on his face as he stared at Qin Wentian's name. The payout rate for Qin Wentian becoming one of the top 9 rankings was 1, 4. The payout rate for him becoming one of the top 3 rankings was 1, 100, and the payout rate for him becoming the champion of the Junlin banquet was even more ridiculously high, 1, 400. Do you think we should place a bet? The youth beside Immortal Drunken Wine laughed. Which one? Top 9, top 3, or the champion? Immortal Drunken Wine asked with a smile as he drank a mouthful of wine. The conversation between the two of them aroused the interest of the people around them. There was actually someone who wanted to bet on Qin Wentian to be the champion, and the top 3. Was he crazy? There was still hope for the top 9, and there were quite a few people betting on them. However, the top and top 3 would probably be a waste. What do you think? the young man said with a smile. I don't know. You should know that I can't even afford to drink alcohol now. As for the remaining 2 yuan meteor stones, I'll just casually bet on the champion. Immortal Drunken Wine took out 2 second heavenly layer yuan meteor stones and placed them beside Qin Wentian's name. His actions caused many in the crowd to laugh. Immortal Drunken Wine, why don't you use these 2 yuan meteor stones to buy some wine? It should be enough for you to drink for a few months. Someone jeered, not paying much attention to Immortal Drunken Wine. However, someone from Drunken Wonder walked over and recorded Immortal Drunken Wine's bet. At the same time, he gave Immortal Drunken Wine a proof of his bet. If he won, he would be able to use the proof to claim the yuan meteor stones from Heaven's Wonder. Fine, let's do it this way then. For the champion, I'll bet 100 second heavenly layer yuan meteor stones. For the top 3, I'll bet 100 second heavenly layer yuan meteor stones. It's the same for the top 9 as well. The youth beside Immortal Drunken Wine laughed, causing the surrounding crowd to quieten down. 300 second heavenly layer yuan meteor stones were all placed on Qin Wentian, 100 for each spot. Aren't you afraid of losing everything? Immortal Drunken Wine laughed. Why don't you think so? As long as he gets into the top 9, according to the one. For payout rate, I will earn a total of 100. If he gets into the top 3, I will earn 10,100. If he gets into the top 3, I will earn 10,100. If he wins, I will earn. The youth laughed, causing the hearts of the crowd to tremble. Although it sounded wonderful, when one thought about it, it wasn't the case. It was precisely because the possibility of Qin Wentian obtaining the top 3 was too low that the payout rate was so high. In this world, there was no such thing as a free lunch. These 300 yuan meteor stones would most likely be wasted. However, what was the status of this youth? How could he be so generous? If you win, Heaven's Wonder would definitely cry. Immortal Drunken Wine laughed, while the youth beside him was already communicating with the people from Drunken Wonder. Very quickly, someone delivered the proof of his bet. Evidently, this youth wasn't joking. Immortal Drunken Wine, this friend of yours is really funny. At this moment, a voice drifted over. Immortal Drunken Wine glanced over, only to see Chiu Mo. Everyone has their own ambitions. This is my friend's hobby, there's no need for you to worry. Immortal Drunken Wine replied in a carefree manner. Your friend's hobby is indeed unique. Chiu Mo laughed. I'm afraid these 300 yuan meteor stones are going to be thrown away. Immortal Drunken Wine laughed, not intending to argue with Chiu Mo. However, at this moment, a fatty squeezed through the crowd, with over 10 yuan meteor stones in his hands. With a fierce look in his eyes, he placed the yuan meteor stones in the top 3 and top 9 positions respectively. Fatty, I remember that you only bet 5 yuan meteor stones yesterday. This time around, you only bet 10 yuan meteor stones, yet you still dare to shout so loudly. A person laughed, and upon seeing the shameless expression on the fatty's face, the crowd couldn't help but laugh. The fatty was naturally none other than Fan Lo. His lips curled into a grin, as though he didn't mind it at all. Earning yuan meteor stones was the most important thing. He could only hope that that bastard Qin Wentian would put in more effort and kill his way into the top 3. Fan Lo, you should just take those yuan meteor stones back and focus on your cultivation. Chiu Mo mocked. Fatty inclined his head, as he grinned at Chiu Mo. I know you are jealous of Qin Wentian. Back then, you made use of Jiang Xiu to deal with Qin Wentian, and in the end, Jiang Xiu's arm was severed by Qin Wentian during the Junlin banquet. However, your skin is still as thick as ever, and you don't seem to have the slightest bit of shame. Do you really want me to tell everyone that you have a crush on Qin Wentian? Upon hearing Fan Li's words, the expressions on the faces of the crowd turned extremely interesting. As for Chiu Mo, his countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. He coldly snorted as he placed some yuan meteor stones on Luo Qianqiu and Sikong Mingyue, before departing. Let's go, the Junlin banquet is about to begin. At this moment, the people of Drunken Wonder all departed. Although they were busy placing their bets, they couldn't afford to miss out on the Junlin banquet. In the Chu Emperor district, the people of the royal capital had already prepared a brand new banquet. The participants of the various transcendent powers were all seated at the banquet. Chu Tianjiao's silhouette also appeared on the azure jadeite dragon seat. On the 9 towering platforms, those who had passed the Junlin banquet the previous day were all present. Since the Junlin banquet was only held once a year, they naturally understood the rules. An old man beside Chu Tianjiao gazed at the 9 towering platforms as he spoke. Congratulations to all the participants for advancing to the second round of the Junlin banquet. I'm sure everyone is clear about the rules, so this old man will repeat them once more. For those who are blasted off the platforms, they will be given a chance to return to the platform and challenge another person. If you lose, you will be completely eliminated. If you win, your opponent will be eliminated. Remember, those who return to the platform will only have a single chance to challenge another person. If you succeed, you will be able to remain in the Junlin banquet, but you can only passively accept challenges from others. The loser will be directly eliminated. You can freely choose who you want to challenge. But there's one thing you have to remember. After you defeat your opponent, you are not allowed to challenge that person a second time. These are the rules of the second round of the Junlin banquet. The remaining 9 will be the top 9 of the Junlin banquet, and will participate in the ultimate ranking battle. The crowd fell silent. They were all clear about the rules. The second round of the Junlin banquet was even more brutal compared to the first round. For the sake of fairness, those who were defeated by others on the same platform would be given a chance to return to the platform. If not, if Luo Qianqiu or Xikong Mingyue intentionally targeted someone, that person would be too unlucky. Hence, they would be given a chance to return to the platform. Not only that, after returning to the platform and successfully defeating your opponent, the person who defeated you earlier would not be allowed to challenge you again. Naturally, if there were 2 powerful people intentionally targeting the same person, you could only blame it on your bad luck. The probability of this happening was extremely low. Those powerful seated participants would rather stay on the platform and rest. There were 2 participants on each of the 9 platforms. On the 9th platform, Qin Wentian and 7th Knight. At this moment, the spectators were thinking that since the Snow Cloud Country and Chu Country were competing against each other in the Junlin banquet, even if they had some grudges in the past, they wouldn't make a move against someone from the Snow Cloud Country for the sake of glory. After all, this place was the Chu Country. On the 4th platform, Orkan's eyes abruptly shifted as he stared at the 9th platform. His gaze was incomparably sharp as it pierced straight towards Qin Wentian. The hatred he had for Qin Wentian was something that had existed for a very long time. During the Junlin banquet, Qin Wentian had advanced to the second round, and he had the opportunity to fight against Qin Wentian. However, Qin Wentian's current strength was different from the past. He was extremely powerful, and he had defeated Jiang Xiu. Even if he was facing Orkan, he had no choice but to be more cautious. Qin Yao, do you want to sit here? At this moment, at the side of the Chu Emperor seat, Xiao LVL suddenly spoke. His gaze was fixed on Qin Yao. No need. Qin Yao's countenance changed. Her countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. Xiao LVL smiled, but he didn't insist. And at this moment, on the first platform, Xikong Mingyue slowly turned his body as he stared at the silhouettes on the platforms behind him. His long robes fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were exceptionally bright. I've long heard that Miss Qin has a brother named Wentian. Being able to meet him today at the Junlin banquet can be considered a fortunate event. I wonder which elite of our Snow Cloud Country is willing to spar against him, allowing me to admire his splendor? Xikong Mingyue's voice was calm as he slowly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, many in the crowd had expressions of bewilderment on their faces. Although Xikong Mingyue's words were polite and humble, the hidden meaning behind his words wasn't polite at all. In fact, he couldn't even be bothered to personally spar against Qin Wentian. Could it be that the words Xiao LVL spoke to Qin Yao earlier also had a deeper meaning behind them? Why did Xikong Mingyue suddenly want to deal with Qin Wentian after Xiao LVL's words? Although he wanted to deal with Qin Wentian, it was evident that Xikong Mingyue wasn't willing to personally act. Or to put it more accurately, he felt disdain for Qin Wentian to act. This was because he was extremely proud in his heart. In the entire Snowcloud country, only he and Xiao LVL could be called the twin chosen. Naturally, the relationship between Xiao LVL and Sikong Mingyue was extremely good, as close as brothers. Chapter 125. Qin Wentian abruptly shifted his gaze onto Sikong Mingyue, as a sharp glint of sharpness flickered in his eyes. According to what Mo Qingqing had said, the Crown Prince of Snowcloud Country was no ordinary person. His talent was outstanding, his ambition was great, and his status in Snowcloud Country was extremely high. Sikong Mingyue also stared at him, his eyes as calm as ever. After which, he slowly turned and sat down on the first towering platform, as though all of this had nothing to do with him. And at the same time, on the seventh towering platform, a silhouette abruptly leapt up, akin to a wild goose as he ascended the eighth towering platform. Not only that, he didn't stop there, and continued on his way to the ninth towering platform, standing in front of Qin Wentian. This person was none other than Sixth Knight, a young man with a muscular build. His age shouldn't be young, but his speed was light and graceful. Evidently, his movement technique wasn't bad at all. Interesting, who would have thought that Orkan didn't act? But the first one to act was actually someone from the Snowcloud country. I heard that Xiao LV.I has a lot of prestige in the Snowcloud country, and his relationships with others are extremely good as well. I'm afraid that the relationship between these geniuses from the Snowcloud country wouldn't be bad. As the spectators mused, Sixth Knight had already arrived in front of Qin Wentian. He didn't say a single word, and only stared at Qin Wentian, like a hunter staring at his prey. Qin Wentian stared at his opponent. This person was extremely mature, giving off a sense of steadiness and steadiness. His combat experience should be extremely rich. Rubbing his interspatial ring, an ancient halberd appeared in Qin Wentian's hands. He spoke. I've already destroyed the divine inscriptions within this halberd. It's not a divine weapon, and there's no amplification effect. You can inspect it. An old man soared through the air, landing beside Qin Wentian. After inspecting the halberd, he nodded his head. Indeed, it's not a divine weapon. There's no amplification effect, it can be used. This fellow, he actually destroyed the divine inscriptions within a divine weapon. How extravagant! Divine inscriptionists are indeed wealthy. Many in the crowd murmured in their hearts. Was Qin Wentian going to use a divine weapon? It seemed like he was also feeling the pressure during the battle for the top 9 rankings. Humph! Sixth Knight coldly laughed. After which, a tyrannical aura erupted forth from him as an astral soul appeared. It was a beast-type astral soul. A gigantic demonic beast with curved horns protruding from its head, resembling an ox god. That tyrannical aura erupted forth as crackling sounds rang out. Sixth Knight's body expanded in size. Big brother Ox, please be gentler. Seventh Knight giggled from the side. After which, a booming sound rang out, causing the entire platform to tremble. Sixth Knight took a huge step forward, advancing towards Qin Wentian. Dong dong dong. The Sixth Knight's aura grew stronger and stronger. It was as if he had turned into a mad bull as he charged towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian tightly gripped the ancient halberd in his hands. Just as his opponent's attack was about to reach him, Qin Wentian took a step forward and executed the Azure Dragon stance. The silhouette of an Azure Dragon howled as it smashed forward. Rumble. The shadow of the Azure Dragon exploded, and Sixth Knight instantly entered a berserk state. His palms shot forwards, wanting to grab hold of Qin Wentian's heavenly halberd. Qin Wentian's feet moved as he executed the Garuda movement technique. His speed was incomparably fast, yet his opponent was relentless in his pursuit. How strong is the defense of this type of beast-type astral soul? Qin Wentian laughed as he stomped heavily on the ground. The ancient halberd pierced out once again, emitting a sharp whistling sound as the power contained within it was unknown how terrifying it was. Sixth Knight's body tilted to the side, evading the ancient halberd. His clumsy and gigantic body was actually extremely agile. At the same time, he directly crushed the surging aura of the ancient halberd. Stretching out his left hand, he grabbed hold of the ancient halberd as he continued his charge towards Qin Wentian. The crowd discovered that at this moment, Sixth Knight's entire body was enveloped by a layer of demonic light. His aura was terrifying, and the force of his charge was so great that it could even shatter a mountain. This is Brother Ox's Maddox Roar, a mid-tier Earth-grade innate technique. Not only that, it requires one to absorb the essence of a powerful Ox-type demonic beast in order to master it. Seventh Knight giggled, as Sixth Knight's terrifying innate technique slammed towards Qin Wentian's body. When Sixth Knight's body neared Qin Wentian, that terrifying aura caused Qin Wentian to feel as though 10,000 horses were galloping towards him, madly slamming into his body. The divine energy within his stellar meridians erupted forth as Qin Wentian's left hand abruptly blasted out. The terrifying falling mountain palms was akin to a true mountain smashing downwards, slamming into Sixth Knight's body. At the instant of impact, the crowd could see a violent flow of air gushing forth. He withstood it. An expression of astonishment appeared on Seventh Knight's face. She was very clear on how ferocious Sixth Knight's attack was. That was definitely a berserk attack. With a cultivation base at the 7th level of arterial circulation, how could Qin Wentian withstand it with just a palm strike? What she didn't know was that Qin Wentian's divine energy was condensed from the 5th heavenly layer of astral energy, and even included some of the 2nd level divine imprints, the mountain divine imprint. This was the reason why his falling mountain palms had such terrifying power, allowing him to forcefully block his opponent's attack. Roar! Sixth Knight howled in rage as he frenziedly dragged Qin Wentian along with him, rushing towards the bottom of the platform, wanting to forcefully knock Qin Wentian off the platform. Let go! Qin Wentian spoke to Sixth Knight. His eyes were filled with a domineering aura, causing Sixth Knight to feel as though he was about to submit. Scram! Sixth Knight howled in rage. Although Qin Wentian did his best to resist, he was still pushed to the edge of the platform by Sixth Knight. Many in the crowd watched on nervously. Could it be that Qin Wentian would be eliminated in the first battle of the 2nd round? Courting death. Qin Wentian roared in rage, causing the crowd to be bewildered. They couldn't understand why Qin Wentian would still be able to spit out such arrogant words. At this moment, the divine energy within Qin Wentian's body was madly converging, condensing into divine inscriptions of the 1st level. Currently, Qin Wentian was able to condense this type of divine inscription within a short period of time. The sword-shaped divine inscriptions converged, transforming into a terrifyingly sharp sword in Qin Wentian's arterial circulation. But at this moment, the spectators didn't know that Sixth Knight was determined to smash Qin Wentian off the platform. Qin Wentian opened his mouth, and in that instant, a resplendent beam of sword light shot out from his mouth, incomparably sharp. Arg! A scream of agony rang out. Sixth Knight's movements instantly halted. The sharp sword that Qin Wentian had spat out from his mouth had already broken through the protective barrier of his demonic qi, and directly pierced through one of his eyes. Sixth Knight's aura instantly exploded outwards, and the sword light condensed from the divine energy also disappeared. However, the damage done to Sixth Knight had already been determined. Scram! Qin Wentian, who had already reached the edge of the platform, grabbed hold of Mad Bull's body, and directly threw him off the platform. This sudden reversal caused the spectators to be dumbfounded. The gazes they used to look at Qin Wentian grew increasingly strange. Spitting out a sharp sword from his mouth, this fellow actually had such an ability. This was truly unexpected. Orkan's countenance changed slightly. He had personally witnessed Qin Wentian spitting out palm imprints. But now, it seemed as though he was even more proficient in this technique, directly spitting out a sharp sword from his mouth, making it impossible for his opponent to defend against it. In fact, it was the same as when he defeated Jiang Xiu in the first battle. Qin Wentian wasn't proficient in swordsmanship, so where did his swords come from? In the spectator stands, in the direction of the Mo clan, beside Mo Qingqing, the eyes of her father flickered with sharpness as he spoke in a low voice. This brat's arterial circulation is extremely smooth, but how did he manage to spit out a sharp sword from his mouth? Not only him, the Yuanfu cultivators from the Emperor Star Academy, as well as the various transcendent powers, were all extremely curious. How did Qin Wentian accomplish this? This kind of ability was extremely rare, and they had never heard of any Yuanfu cultivators possessing it before. Could it be that Qin Wentian had comprehended it himself? If that was the case, his comprehension ability had to be re-evaluated. Compared to the fact that Sixth Knight was blinded, they were more concerned about how Qin Wentian had accomplished this. It wasn't that these people were cold-blooded and emotionless, it was just that in the world of cultivation, the majority of them were already used to death or heavy injuries. On the stage of the Junlin banquet, there would always be geniuses falling, and heavy injuries were extremely common. However, those from Snowcloud didn't think so. Not only was Sixth Knight defeated, his eyes were also blinded. This indicated that he had lost the ability to challenge others. The battle against Qin Wentian at the Junlin banquet would be his final battle. Forget about the challenge, bring him back to the royal palace to recuperate. Chu Tianjiao calmly spoke. A few silhouettes stepped out, carrying the heavily injured Sixth Knight away as they mounted demonic beasts and soared into the skies. After Sixth Knight's defeat, the spectators had to re-evaluate Qin Wentian's strength. To be able to spit out a sharp sword from his mouth, it was absolutely impossible for one to engage in close combat with Qin Wentian. If they were to be suppressed during combat, would they still be able to defend against a sword attack from his mouth? The ending of Sixth Knight was the best proof of this. Out of the 18 participants, only 17 remained. Seems like Qin Wentian's chances of entering the top 9 has increased. Many people were thinking in their hearts, regretting that they didn't bet on Qin Wentian entering the top 9 at the Drunken Wonder Inn. Right now, the payout rate of Drunken Wonder Inn had been adjusted. If they were to bet now, they would have to follow the new payout rate. At this moment, Fatty Fan Lu was extremely agitated. He had bet everything he had. If Qin Wentian was able to charge into the top 9, no top 3, that would be too wonderful. Sikong Mingyue turned and stared at Qin Wentian, as a sharp glint of light flickered in his eyes. In the first round, the victor and loser have yet to be determined. In that case, let's continue with the unfinished battles. This time around, before Sikong Mingyue could even open his mouth, Qin Wentian had already spoken. After which, he brandished his ancient halberd as he advanced towards the direction of Seventh Knight. The ancient halberd was dragged along the ground, causing an ear-piercing screech to echo out. The aura radiating from Qin Wentian continued to rise unceasingly. At this moment, Qin Wentian gave off a feeling of arrogance and unruliness. As long as he unsheathed his halberd, who could contend against him? This kind of aura seemed to have been engraved into his bones. Inadvertently, when he released his aura, he was akin to a supreme expert. He stood there leisurely, looking down at the world with disdain. At this moment, Seventh Knight felt a terrifying pressure gushing towards her. Chapter 126. Seventh Knight's beautiful eyes flickered as she sensed Qin Wentian's aura, after which, she smiled at Qin Wentian. Wentian Gidge, do you really have the heart to do this to me? At this moment, the pitiful look on Seventh Knight's face made Qin Wentian feel as though the person he was facing wasn't Seventh Knight. Wentian Gidge. Only that last Bai Qing would address him in this manner. Ever since the Bai clan moved to the royal capital, Qin Wentian had never seen Bai Qing again. Now that a year had passed, he wondered how she was doing. At this moment, a surge of coldness suddenly appeared. Qin Wentian's countenance flashed like lightning. This was an illusion. Seventh Knight possessed the ability to create illusions. His will once again became resolute, his heart as hard as steel, and his gaze as sharp as a spear. An indomitable aura once again appeared as he advanced forward. Seventh Knight's soul-stirring eyes were still fixated on Qin Wentian. However, she also felt that her own eyes were about to sink into the illusion. The illusion in the depths of Qin Wentian's eyes was like a dream, causing her to be unable to extricate herself. Qin Wentian similarly unleashed his innate talent through his eyes. Bzzz. The ancient halberd exploded outwards. Qin Wentian's body soared through the air as he descended from the skies, akin to a ferocious tiger rushing down from the mountains, incomparably tyrannical. Wentian Gidge, you are so ruthless. Seventh Knight spoke in a meek voice. Yet her words were unable to shake Qin Wentian's heart. The ancient halberd instantly descended. Seventh Night had finally started her counterattack. Frost froze the ancient halberd, as numerous ice spears pierced out in rage. Although the ice spears were all shattered, the number of ice spears was simply too many. Qin Wentian's ancient halberd danced about continuously. The azure dragon roared, the white tiger roared, and the vermilion bird swept through the air, shattering all the ice spears in his way. Qin Wentian's attacks continued on his way towards Seventh Night. Seventh Night took a few steps back, but Qin Wentian didn't even give her the chance to breathe. Sixth Night's berserk strength was her strength, while Seventh Night's agility was her control and illusion abilities. In that case, he would use his strength to suppress her. Seventh Night released her astral soul, only to see a gigantic coiling ice python appearing. Its eyes were fixed on Qin Wentian, causing him to feel a sense of demonic terror. At the same time, the seventh palm shook, and a giant frost python rushed out, colliding with his ancient halberd. Wentian Gidge. Seventh Night shouted again. Abruptly, a terrifying astral light radiated from her body. Her body rotated slightly as a pair of golden wings appeared on her back. They were like rows of golden blades slicing towards Qin Wentian. At this moment they were as fast as lightning, and when they exploded out, it was impossible for anyone to dodge. That's only her second astral soul. Her first astral soul was an ice-attributed python astral soul, and it was bestowed with the power of illusion. The pupils of the spectators narrowed. They had all been deceived by Seventh Night, thinking that her power of illusion was also a type of astral soul. So it turned out that it was a talent bestowed upon her by her ice-attributed python astral soul. Her second astral soul was a pair of wings, incomparably resplendent. When it swept out, it was as sharp as a blade, wanting to sever Qin Wentian's body into two. Qin Wentian's right hand that was holding onto the halberd was frozen by his opponent, while Seventh Night's wings slashed towards his right from an extremely crafty angle. Qin Wentian's hand that was holding onto the halberd relaxed in an instant, as he slammed out with his palm towards the golden rays of light. The rumbling sounds of his palm imprints were akin to a terrifying torrent, while at the same time, he spat out a beam of razor-sharp sword light. This battle caused the spectators to be dazzled. It was too fascinating. Regardless of whether it was Qin Wentian or Seventh Night, both of their attacks were impossible to defend against. Seventh Night's body abruptly spun around at a rapid speed, and in that instant, the entire sky was filled with golden astral light. The resplendent wings were as beautiful as the wings of a phoenix. Seventh Night's graceful figure danced gracefully in the air, and as she spun around, the sword light that landed on her body was instantly destroyed. Only Qin Wentian could feel how dangerous Seventh Night was at this moment. Her wings were akin to millions of sharp swords slashing towards him, slicing through the air. If he was struck by them, he would die without a doubt. Seventh Night's strength isn't any weaker than Sixth Night's. The spectators exclaimed in admiration. As expected of a battle of the Junlin banquet, it was indeed fascinating. Rumble. Within Qin Wentian's arterial pathways, terrifying rumbling sounds rang out. The divine energy condensed from the second-level divine imprint of the mountain divine imprint howled as it flowed through his arterial pathways and into Qin Wentian's palms. Qin Wentian retreated a few steps, before ruthlessly stomping his foot on the ground, causing the entire platform to tremble. After which, Qin Wentian blasted out with his palm. It was still the falling mountain palms, but this palm didn't seem to be a palm, but rather a mountain peak pressing downwards. The spectators felt that Seventh Night was extremely tiny and insignificant. Seventh Night's sharpness was too sharp. Since that was the case, he would use force to break it. Boom! It was as though a mountain peak had smashed into Seventh Night's body. Her dancing silhouette instantly halted, as though her internal organs were shaken by the force of Qin Wentian's palm strike. Get down! Qin Wentian continued forward, slamming his palm onto Seventh Night's body. In an instant, Seventh Night's body was flung through the air, directly landing below the platform as she staggered backwards. Her face reddened, and finally, she couldn't endure it any longer as she coughed out a mouthful of blood. After which, She sat down cross-legged as her countenance gradually turned pale. Although her attack earlier was terrifying, her defense wasn't that strong. Qin Wentian's falling mountain palms, which were formed from the divine energy of the mountain divine inscriptions, were extremely ferocious. How could she not be heavily injured? Picking up the ancient halberd, Qin Wentian stood there. His gaze wasn't on Seventh Night, but on the various towering platforms. A gentle breeze ruffled his robes, as his long hair danced in the wind. His gaze landed on Sikong Mingyue, as though he was silently declaring to him that it wouldn't be so easy for him to get down from the platform. For the next two battles, Qin Wentian appeared. In the first battle he lost to Sixth Night. In the second battle he lost to Seventh Night. Are there any more challenges? The old man beside Chu Tianjiao asked Seventh Night. Seventh Night opened her eyes as she replied, "Please give me some time, let the others fight first." "Fine, I'll wait for your next battle." The old man nodded his head. Those who lost all had a chance to fight again. Since Seventh Night was injured and didn't want to give up, he would give her a chance. On the ninth towering platform, only Qin Wentian remained. He sat cross-legged and took out a yuan meteor stone. Releasing his astral soul, he began to absorb the astral energy within the yuan meteor stone, before using his astral soul to temper it. He needed the purest form of astral energy. The yuan meteor stone in his hand was only a meteorite from the second heavenly layer. Only by tempering it with his astral soul would it be able to absorb the astral energy he needed. Seems like that mountain-like palm imprint caused Qin Wentian to expend quite a bit of astral energy. The spectators mused. Qin Wentian took the opportunity to rest to replenish his astral energy. The amount of astral energy that Wuxia's body could store was limited. The higher one's cultivation base, the larger the vessel the human body was, and the more astral energy it could store. And the stronger an innate technique was, the more astral energy it would consume. Hence, if one could use a simple innate technique to defeat their opponent, no one would be willing to waste too much astral energy to use their strongest attack. Our snow cloud country's Qi has actually been defeated twice in a row, Sikong Minghua calmly stated. The faces of those from Snow Cloud couldn't even be seen. Currently, only 5 of them remained on the platform. They were Sikong Mingyue, Second Sword, Third Night and Fourth Night. The countenances of these people were solemn. Their gazes once again shifted onto the ninth towering platform. Does the Snow Cloud country think they can bully my Chu country? Luo Huan laughed lightly as she slowly walked towards Fourth Night. Since Seventh Night only had a single battle to rest, she would help Qin Wentian to settle this. Fourth Night's countenance was extremely heavy as he stared at Luo Huan. During the first round, he had seen Luo Huan's combat prowess. The flexibility and toughness of this woman's body was terrifying. A long whip appeared in her hands as Luo Huan advanced towards Fourth Night. Abruptly, her long whip danced in the air, transforming into a myriad of whip shadows that filled the skies, akin to millions of sharp swords shooting towards Fourth Night. Fourth Night stepped out. His palms trembled as a ball of azure light appeared around him, enveloping him within. At the same time, he withstood the attacks of the millions of whip shadows as he dashed towards Luo Huan. This defense. The spectators had expressions of astonishment on their faces. Maybe Luo Huan's attacks were somewhat lacking? Luo Huan similarly dashed towards Fourth Night, and the two of them instantly clashed. Fourth Night's arm transformed into a saber light as he slashed out. Luo Huan's body twisted, barely dodging the attack. At the same time, her other hand actually landed on Fourth Night's shoulder. Boom! Fourth Night punched out, as a terrifying fist light directly landed on Luo Huan's body. However, it was as though he had punched nothing but air. Luo Huan's body bent over, resembling a willow tree branch. After which, with a ferocious leap, she coiled around Fourth Night's body. Scram! Fourth Night's entire body erupted with a terrifying saber intent as he released his astral soul, incomparably violent. Luo Huan's body spun madly, and in an instant, it was unknown how many times she spun. Her speed was even faster than Seventh Night's, and in an instant, the spectators discovered that Fourth Night's body seemed to have been buried by the vines. The speed at which the saber light sliced through the air was actually slower than the speed at which she spun. Mustang, who was standing on the platform, laughed lightly. Luo Huan's performance didn't surprise him at all. In truth, only a few people knew how powerful Luo Huan's talent was. Usually, she would always smile, but in crucial moments, she would always be able to erupt forth with an astonishing amount of power. Fourth Knight's entire body seemed to be engulfed by the vines. The saber light gradually grew weaker, and only when the spectators could no longer sense it did Luo Huan finally stop spinning. Her sexy legs were still clamped around Fourth Knight's head, as the countless vines and willow branches completely buried Fourth Knight's body. Yet another dark horse. Many people exclaimed in admiration. Luo Huan had actually used her astral soul, which many people didn't think highly of, to unleash such an astonishing amount of power. The combination of the Weeping Willow astral soul and the Longvine astral soul was actually able to unleash such a terrifying power. Naturally, this wasn't just a simple fusion of astral souls. Luo Huan's strength was also the reason why she could perfectly fuse them together. "My sister, why didn't you say so earlier?" Fanla had a bitter expression on his face. He had forgotten to bet on his senior sister Luo Huan. Chapter 127. On the platform, Luo Huan was still tightly controlling Fourth Knight. The spectators could see that Luo Huan had no intentions of letting go. Staring at her beautiful countenance, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Was she trying to take Fourth Knight's life? For such a long time, Fourth Knight was probably suffering from suffocating pain. He has already been defeated. Why don't you release him? Sikong Mingyue stared at Luo Huan as he coldly spoke. "I didn't hear him concede." Luo Huan laughed. "If I let him go, he might attack me again." The cold light in Sikong Mingyue's eyes intensified. However, it was true that Luo Huan didn't break the rules. Not only did she control Fourth Knight, she didn't even give him a chance to speak. It wasn't that Fourth Knight wasn't strong, it was just that Luo Huan's combat style was too bizarre. The combination of her two astral souls allowed her to possess a body that could be described as perfect and resilient. It was like the whip in her hands, able to twist and turn as she pleased. Fourth Knight didn't even have the chance to display his combat power, but he had already fallen into such a desperate situation. "It's best to leave some leeway in life," Sikong Mingyue calmly said. "Just now, when you were preparing to take turns to fight my junior brother, you didn't seem to have thought of this." Luo Huan continued giggling. Evidently, she couldn't bear to see those from Snowcloud repeatedly acting against Qin Wentian. Hence, she decided to retaliate against the Emperor Star Academy. Sikong Mingyue was speechless. However, a terrifying killing intent gushed forth from him. Staring at Fourth Knight who was beneath Luo Huan, he coldly stated, "I will avenge you." "I'm not that cruel." Luo Huan laughed. After which, her body slid down the platform as she kicked Fourth Knight off the platform. After Fourth Knight was freed, he took a deep breath and fainted. It was obvious that he no longer had the ability to return to the stage. These people are truly ruthless, not even giving the opponent a chance to turn the tables. The crowd silently speculated. Qin Wentian was like this, and so was Luo Huan. Fourth Knight had lost the right to return to the stage, but Seventh Knight still had a chance. Her face was still pale, evidently not enough time to recover from her injuries. "Forget it, have a good rest," Sikong Mingyue said to Seventh Knight. Seventh Knight reluctantly nodded her head, and gave up the opportunity to return to challenge. At this moment the 4th, 6th and 7th Knights were all eliminated. Out of the 18 participants, only 15 remained. As for Snowcloud, there were only 4 participants remaining. Such an ending wasn't something the Snowcloud country wanted to see. They had traveled thousands of miles to come to Chu, and even joined forces with Chu to host the Junlin banquet. If their results were too bad, wouldn't they lose all face when they returned to Snowcloud? "Everyone, choose your own opponent," Sikong Mingyue calmly said. In an instant, several figures on the stage moved. The second sword arrived in front of Shi Jun. The third knight walked towards Guangsheng. As for the third sword, he wanted to move towards Qin Wentian. However, just as he was about to reach Qin Wentian, A silhouette blocked his path. That silhouette was none other than a silent young man, Gu Xing. From the start to the end, this young man hadn't spoken a single word. He was silent, quiet, and just like his name, he was like a lonely star. However, in the first round he had defeated Fifth Knight. Nobody dared to underestimate him. At this moment, Gu Xing stood in front of Third Sword. It was unknown if he was intentionally blocking for Qin Wentian, or if he was just casually doing it. But no matter what his purpose was, at least this time around, the spectators would be able to witness an exciting battle. Sikong Mingyue initially wanted to move, but at this moment, he halted as he stared at the three opponents. The Snowcloud country can't wait any longer. The spectators silently mused. The sword chi from Second Sword gushed forth as a terrifying tempest enveloped his entire body. With a flick of his finger, countless beams of sword light shot towards the eighth prodigy. Shijun's body was like a boulder as he punched out with his fist. But in an instant, the boulder was shattered by the sharp sword, causing him to retreat a step. The sword chi from Second Sword was exceedingly sharp. He had exchanged blows with Jiang Xiu before, and Jiang Xiu's sword intent was far inferior to Second Sword's. If Jiang Xiu's sword intent was akin to the Autumn Rain of Swords, then Second Sword's sword intent would be akin to the Tempest of Swords. At the same time, Third Knight also started to make his move against Kuang Sheng, ranked number 9 of the 10 prodigies. Third Knight had some similarities with Sixth Knight. They were both proficient in offense and strength. Brandishing his gigantic axe, he directly slashed towards Kuang Sheng. Kuang Sheng was proficient in saber techniques, and he used his tyrannical saber techniques to clash against Third Knight. However, every time they clashed, the spectators would discover that Kuang Sheng's saber techniques would slow down, and he would be forced to retreat. Evidently, he was at a disadvantage in terms of strength. Third Knight was using brute force to break through. Although his axe techniques seem clumsy, they are actually extremely exquisite. Kuang Sheng's saber techniques are being suppressed to the point of death. Shijun and Kuang Sheng are both going to be defeated soon. The spectators mused. This time around, the rankings of the top 5 prodigies would all change. Orkan, Luo Huan, Qin Wentian, and even Luo Cheng would all be ranked within the top 10 prodigies. There would always be geniuses in every generation. If one didn't advance, they would have to retreat. This was reality. Third Sword also released his sword-type astral soul at this moment, as the sword intent radiating from him started to rise. However, Gu Xing still stood there, as though he was eternally alone. There were no fluctuations in his eyes, and only when he stared at his opponent would a terrifying cold light erupt forth. This kind of cold light caused the spectators to feel traces of coldness. The sword light was like a shadow. The Third Sword stabbed out. This was a sword art divine ability that had no flaws. It was as if under his sword light, no other light could exist. All the brilliance belonged to his sword. Puchi. A light sound rang out, causing the spectators to be stunned. Third Sword was stunned as well. His sword had pierced through Gu Xing's left arm. He wanted to seal off Gu Xing's path of retreat, but Gu Xing didn't retreat at all, nor did he evade. He allowed the sword to easily pierce through his body. Third Sword's combat experience was extremely plentiful. However, he had never seen such a situation before. Hence, he was stunned for a moment. At the same time, Gu Xing's hand grabbed hold of the sword that had pierced through his body. His eyes stared straight at Third Sword, and in an instant, Third Sword only felt a piercing pain in his eyes. After which, a palm imprint directly slammed into his head. With a thunderous boom, Third Sword's body was flung through the air, landing below the platform as he screamed in agony. His face was now a bloody mess. This bizarre battle caused the spectators to be dumbfounded, as they fell into a daze. The sword in Gu Xing's left arm had already disappeared. Without the support of astral energy, how could his astral soul take the form of a sword? Gu Xing returned to his original position and sat down cross-legged. There wasn't much blood flowing out from his left arm, and the wound seemed to be healing. What a terrifying recovery ability! What astral soul does he have? The hearts of the spectators trembled as they engraved this lonely silhouette into their minds. His name was Gu Xing, the lonely constellation of stars. At this moment, He had regained his calm. Nobody knew what he was thinking in his heart. Actually, when he defeated Fifth Knight in the first round, many of the major powers in the royal capital had already started to investigate Gu Xing. However, they discovered that it was as though Gu Xing didn't exist in Chu at all. No matter how powerful their intelligence network was, they couldn't find any clues at all. Gu Xing had appeared in the royal capital before the Junlin banquet, but he didn't do anything until he appeared on the platform and defeated Fifth Knight. And now he had defeated Third Sword. Other than Third Sword being defeated, the other two participants from Snowcloud had already defeated their respective opponents. Shi Jun and Kuang Sheng were both defeated, but they still had the ability to challenge their opponents. As for Third Sword, he already had no way of challenging his opponent. Shi Jun and Kuang Sheng once again challenged their opponents, while the others quietly sat there. Shi Jun walked towards Chu Chen, who was also from the Royal Academy. Kuang Sheng seemed to be waiting. When he personally witnessed the little prince Chu Chen defeating Shi Jun, his heart turned even colder. As for the remaining participants, none of them were characters that could be trifled with. Luo Qianqiu, Xikong Mingyue, Second Sword, and Third Knight naturally didn't need to be mentioned. Orkan, Luo Huan, and Gu Xing were all extremely terrifying as well. Ho Tai from the godly General Martial Palace was extremely powerful, and Lengye was also a ruthless character. Kuang Xing couldn't figure out Lengye's background at all. Lastly, there were the two strongest arterial circulation cultivators from the Divine Wind Academy, the sixth prodigy, Jiang Feng, and Qin Wentian. It was simply too difficult to advance to the next round. Even if he won another round, he would still be eliminated in the next round. Finally, Kuang Sheng steeled his heart and walked towards Qin Wentian. After all, he had seen a few of Qin Wentian's battles. Although Qin Wentian was powerful, he still had a clear understanding of Qin Wentian's background. Not only that, Qin Wentian had expended a large amount of astral energy and was currently busy with his cultivation. When Kuang Sheng appeared in front of Qin Wentian opened his eyes. Staring at Kuang Sheng, he slowly stood up. In the end, it's because I'm too kind, Qin Wentian murmured. He no longer wielded the ancient halberd in his hands. The 7 arterial pathways in his body surged and rumbled, so loud that the spectators could almost hear the sound of it. This scene caused Kuang Sheng's countenance to stiffen as his countenance grew even heavier. An illusory pair of Garuda wings appeared behind Qin Wentian's back. In the next instant, his silhouette disappeared from his original location as the forgotten imprint blasted out. Kuang Sheng lifted his saber, as the saber light flashed, shattering the palm imprint. However, Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he instantly disappeared, reappearing at the side of Kuang Sheng as he sent out yet another palm strike. Kuang Sheng pushed his footwork to the limits, following closely behind Qin Wentian's attack. An instant later, the spectators only saw the silhouette of Qin Wentian, as before, filling the skies with palm imprints. Kuang Sheng's saber danced about in an impenetrable manner, as a terrifying saber tempest manifested. However, the spectators could tell that if this continued, Kuang Sheng would be defeated sooner or later. And indeed, not long after, Kuang Sheng's saber started to become chaotic, only to see Qin Wentian chopping out with his palm, as Kuang Sheng slashed out with his saber once more. But at the same time, Qin Wentian spat out a sharp sword, causing Kuang Sheng's countenance to drastically change. Boom! A terrifying palm imprint slammed into Kuang Sheng's body, causing him to be flung through the air, landing outside of the platform. After which, he slammed heavily onto the ground as he unceasingly coughed out mouthful after mouthful of blood. It was as though all the meridians in his body had been destroyed. At this moment, Qin Wentian slowly lowered his leg. How could he stop at that? He could only spit out sword light from his mouth. Who said that his leg couldn't be blasted out with palm techniques? At this moment, out of the original 18 contestants, only 12 were left. Only 3 more would be eliminated, and the top 9 would be revealed. However, the hearts of the spectators grew even more nervous. This was especially so for those who had placed their bets. Their hearts were pounding wildly. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.